Our regularly scheduled council meeting of March 3rd is now in session. Would you call the roll, please?
Mayor Clark,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Mulvey.
Just about here.
Okay. Councilmember Brinkman. Here. Councilmember Cole. Here. Councilmember Ostermiller.
Here.
Councilmember Taylor.
Present.
And Councilmember Trujillo.
Here.
We're honored to have the Frontier District Boy Scouts who are going to do the flag ceremony and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. If you'd all rise, please.
Color guard attention. Color guard advance the colors. Color guard post the colors. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. 2. Color guard dismissed. The audience may be seated.
They were so cute.
Thank you, Scouts. Council, you have the agenda in front of you. Are there any changes to the agenda?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to request moving, let's see, 9D to the study session, since we now have a study session that would be appropriate to discuss in that context.
Well, Mr. Woods pointed out that we're going to have that session in here because that's not set
Well,
up.
I mean, I don't care where we have it. It's just since the
all right,
issues
you want to
related
move that
it,
after 13E.
or
Go to 14A.
14A.
Well, 14 is adjournment.
14A.
Pardon?
There's an A.
I know, but we don't really want to adjourn a meeting to then go into another meeting. So let's make it 14. Let's change 14A to 14B and change 9D to, I'm sorry. Let's change 14A to 13G and change 9D to 13F. Are you all okay with that? Any objections?
I will object. Gone.
Pardon?
It's good.
Okay.
I'll object.
All right, then we need a motion to change the agenda. And I'll move that we move 14A to 13G and 9D to 13F.
Now, Mr. Mayor, the intent of my motion, otherwise we might as well keep it
We
where
don't
it
have a
is.
second yet.
Oh,
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Discussion.
So the intent of my motion was to get that in the discussion that the study session's dealing with. So I don't think we should have it before, separate from that discussion.
Okay. Further discussion. Council ready to vote? The motion is to amend the agenda, moving 14A up as 13G and move 9D down as 13F. Council ready to vote?
The vote is 3 in favor, with Councilwoman Cole, Councilman Taylor, Councilman Ostermiller, and Councilman Trujillo voting no. The motion is defeated.
Okay, then the council stays as presented. Minutes of the January 30th meeting. Any changes? That was easy. The minutes then are accepted as submitted. Minutes for the February 10th meeting. Any changes?
I had two.
Okay.
At least I think it's two. Just a second. On page 3 at the top, there's several motions in there, and I went back and looked at the tape because we have motions with no main motion preceding them. And I have written this down to give to our city clerk, but Councilmember Clark moved not to fund Gateway Battered Women's Shelter. The motion died for a lack of second, so that needs to be inserted. Then line 52, Councilmember Cole moved to approve 3,000. There was no main motion being amended there. And the votes on that, I believe, were ayes 2, nays 3, and I think it's, heaven help me, I don't think I wrote down those. So you're going to need to look on the video, which you knew was an issue. I want to say on behalf of our clerk, she had one heck of a challenge trying to deal with this particular meeting. And so I went back and looked, but I had my own challenge, and I'm not sure. I think why I didn't write them down is I don't think I saw all the hands. So I do know it was a 2-3, but I don't know much more than that, and you might not be able to. Line 56, again, is striking to amend the main motion and just amend the motion itself. I guess that is amending that main motion. Again, ayes 2 and 3, nays 3. And line 60 is amending the main motion. So we had a little revision in that piece, and I will give this to the clerk so she follows what I just said. And then my second change is on page, 3 changes actually. On page 12, line 310, motion died for lack of second. And page 13, because we did state, and we can go back and look at the video, which I did, but was a little jumbled, but this is the gist of it. Council requested that next year, Clerk Hefner provide the information to the citizens on the number of vacancies and the number of incumbents wishing to be reappointed before applicants apply for boards and commissions. Staff would ask incumbents whose terms are expiring if they want to be reappointed. I thought we needed to have that clarification of our intent.
Okay. Any other changes? And Wendy, I believe I have the notes on who voted which way on that stuff. So I'll try and get together with you in the next day or two. All right, in that case, those minutes are approved as changed. Any new city employees?
Yes, Mayor, I've got some here, and I know at least 3 of them are here. I'll check on the other one. First, Bob Tinney, who's our new adult services librarian. Bob, if you can just stand. Bob was with 19 years with the Arapahoe Library District, and he's coming over here to join us at Bemis. Is Marjorie here tonight? I think this is maybe the 3rd person that we've poached from the Arapahoe Library District, so they may be coming after us pretty soon, but we're happy to have Bob join our team at Bemis. And then Jessica Rowe. Jessica, if you could stand. Jessica is a new police dispatcher, and she spent some time in the private sector as a dispatcher before she came with us. And then Erica Bogner. Erica, if you could stand. Erica was a dispatcher with El Paso County Sheriff, and so these are our 2 new police dispatchers, and you all know that that's a very, busy shop. And then is Lisa Gibson? Lisa, oh, there you are. Lisa Gibson's our new coordinator at the Service Center. And as those of you down there know that that's a very busy place with all the calls on potholes and street paving. And then in the winter, not so much this winter, but she'll answer a lot of snowplow questions next year. So we're very happy to have these 4 people join the Littleton family.
Thank you. Welcome, and thank you for coming down and letting us see you, and you don't have to stay the whole meeting. All right, that brings us to our guest citizens. When your name is called, come down, and I'll come down and meet you. The Metro Mayors and Commission's Youth Award is an opportunity for Front Range communities to recognize youth who have overcome difficult situations in their lives. These young people have made positive changes and have exhibited strength and determination in the face of adversity. Metro Mayors Commission Youth Award offers them opportunities for further development and recognizes their drive, determination, and accomplishments. The program, which is in its 23rd year, was started by the City and County of Denver's Commission on Youth and by the Family Tree Shelter of Jefferson County. The program is unique in that it honors teens whose efforts, many times up until now, have gone unnoticed. Recipients of the award come from a variety of backgrounds. Some have made poor choices, substance abuse, teen pregnancy gangs, and have rebounded through making more positive choices. Others live in dysfunctional family situations and have overcome the lack of family support and have been able to achieve goals and be productive in other areas of their lives. In addition, many of the award's recipients have struggled with a disease or a disability that has affected them or a close family member. Yet, what all the recipients of this award have in common is that they have broken through, conquered limitations, and they have overcome major adversities in their lives. This evening, we are honoring the young people who were nominated from the Littleton area. These young people are being recognized this evening because they are positive role models to those around them. The Littleton City Council wishes to honor each of them as a valued and contributing members of their families, schools, and the communities. And then Jose, if you could.
Brief summaries of backgrounds of each honoree are listed below. Casey Thompson Comstock. Will you please come forward? Casey has overcome the many levels of adversity that have existed in his life and has demonstrated with his devotion to his own well-being and the well-being of others that he is a mature young person with the dedication to make a difference. He participated in a fundraiser that benefited Women's Shelter and wants to become involved in the Jason Project. Casey has the resolve and determination to achieve whatever goals he has set for himself. Lucas Cruz, please come forward. Lucas has used the many instances of adversity in his life to mold himself into a strong leader and caring individual. He is an avid student who works hard at college preparation. Lucas makes the appropriate choices for himself and is a positive role model for other 8th grade students.
Rachel Catone. The tragic events in Rachel's life have molded her into a more understanding and compassionate person. She has matured into a responsible and intelligent young person full of life, promise, and direction. Rachel has been a great source of support for her mom and little brother during this difficult time and continues to succeed at school. Adrian Grego. I know I said that last name wrong. What is it? Grego. Adrian has endured a very difficult life with more than his share of hardship and tragedy. Through these events, he has come to realize the importance of completing his education and giving back to the community. Every day, Adrian works with significantly disabled children at his school. He helps them with math and reading homework and would like to become a teacher or psychologist.
Amy Thompson. Amy has overcome and has come to terms with the hardships that have taken place in her life. She is a great role model for her peers and always takes care of her responsibilities. Amy is always at school on time, is very involved, and receives excellent grades. She helps around the house with chores and shovels snow at the Arapahoe house to make extra money. Matthew Rodriguez. Matthew has spent the majority of his young life battling physical hardships. Despite his declining physical condition, he continues to have a positive attitude and works diligently with his homebound tutor so that he does not fall far behind in his schoolwork. Matthew is a role model to everyone around him and always has a way of bringing out the best in others.
Greg Norris. Greg was able to overcome a series of misfortunes and has risen above his adversity. He is an excellent student and serves on the student council. Greg has volunteered for many projects at school and helped students at Walt Whitman Elementary with reading. He has volunteered at the Denver Rescue Mission and the Colorado Humane Society. Greg has also been a youth leader for the first 3 years at the Benning Foundation Summer Film School. After graduation, Greg plans on attending college to study cinematography.
Brendan Pesic? Is Brendan here? He's not here.
Go ahead and read it, though, please.
Oh, go ahead and read it. Brendan's own life experiences have lent him a maturity well beyond his years and have allowed him to see things in a more positive light. He is a quiet role model to other students and has been earning A's and B's in his schoolwork. Brendan is on track to graduate in May of this year and plans to attend college to study music production. Nikki Powers? Nikki has suffered tremendous loss and adversity throughout her life, but she has made the decision to move forward and be successful. She attends school, participates in extracurricular activities, and maintains a regular job. Nikki will graduate in May of this year and plans on attending college to study culinary arts.
Great group of kids. Let's give them a hand. And all of you that want pictures, are welcome to come down and get pictures. And Kelly's going to take pictures, and you can see her afterwards, and she'll make sure that you get some.
It's kind of like the Academy Awards, isn't it?
Thanks, guys. Great job.
Mr. Mayor, can we also say something very nice about the teachers and the parents and the foster parents and the other people
Certainly.
who are here, who have helped support these young people in their achievements? And maybe they'd all stand. Come on, you guys,
All the
stand
support
up. I met
people.
quite a few of you.
Right there. Okay, thank you very much. And you don't have to stay for the rest of the meeting either. And congratulations, and I'm really proud of all of you. Certainly. We have a second group of guest citizens. And this evening, the Littleton City Council is pleased to recognize the merchants and community organizations who donated merchandise and services to the Night Out in Littleton events. The endeavor is sponsored by the Littleton Sertoma Club and the American Military Family and will honor 25 United States Marines and their significant others with a night out in Littleton. The program started over the holidays. It is designed to provide a free memorial outing for the Marines by recognizing their service to our country through donations of dinner, a bottle of wine, theater or concert tickets, and a box of chocolates. Town Hall Art Center was the first to sign on with the offer of tickets to one of this season's shows. Hudson Gardens will provide the Marines with tickets to the July 3rd show and fireworks display, and the Marines will also be recognized at the show. And we want to recognize the donors. When I call your name, if you can come down. Phyllis and Joseph Trujillo from Jose's Restaurant. Sammy and Samir Chua, I hope I haven't butchered that name too bad, from Abe's Cafe. Tina and Tom Witham from Lido Wine Merchants. Rich Meredith from Hudson Gardens. Sue Bartlett, John Romano, Neil Romano, Olive Romano's Restaurant. David and Sherry Svensson from Merle's Restaurant.
Mayor, there's a slight typo error. That would be David Svensson and Mark Teets.
I was going to say you didn't look like Sherry to me. Catherine Lambert from the Town Hall Arts Center. Rob Grisham from Marie Callender's Restaurant. And Julie Peach from Chocolates by Mary Carroll. The Littleton Sertoma Club coordinated the efforts by approaching the merchants and working with the American Military Family to select the Marines. The club's president is Denny Fennell. Representing American Military Family is Debbie Quackenbush. The Littleton City Council extends its sincere appreciation to all of those involved in organizing and donating to this very worthwhile program. The participants and the City and Council encourage all Littleton residents to be sure to thank the Marines for their service when you see them and to remember and thank the merchants who made the night out in Littleton possible. Thank you all. Thanks again. We have no scheduled public appearances, which brings us to unscheduled public appearances. And this is an opportunity for any citizen to express an opinion, ask questions regarding city services, council policies, or any other matter of community concern. And this is any item on the agenda that's not scheduled for public hearing. And everything in Section 8 is scheduled for public hearing. So if you want to address us on anything other than Section 8, now would be the time to do it. We ask you to limit yourself to approximately 4 minutes and give your name and address. So anybody? Okay, that takes us to the consent agenda. Consent agenda items are items that are, in theory, non-controversial. They can be adopted by a simple motion. All ordinances and resolutions must be read by title, and any consent agenda item can be removed by the request of any council member. And the first item is an ordinance on first reading regarding an amendment to the wastewater utility ordinance regarding the industrial pretreatment. If you could read that by title, please.
Thank you. This is an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Littleton, Colorado, repealing and reenacting Title VII, Chapter 5 of the Littleton City Code pertaining to wastewater treatment.
And I'm going to pull that one. Second item is an ordinance on first reading amending the 2009 budget to pay off 3 financial lease obligations in the Special Projects Fund. And this is the first reading on of an ordinance that will take approximately $3.4 million from the water fund money that will be transferred to the special projects and pay off some leases and certificates of participation. Doing this will reduce the debt service payments that the city makes each year by about $428,000 for 2009 and 2010, and then by about $360,000 or $361,000 from 2011 through 2015. Part of the reason for doing this is because the water fund, which is about $11.2 million, generates interest for the city. And the interest ranges, it varies quite a bit from year to year depending on what the rate of return is. And it's been varying from about $277,000 to $632,000 per year. So the council decided in the workshop that they wanted to bring this ordinance forward to take some of the water fund that we will vote on the 17th, I believe it is.
Yes, sir.
Transfer it in the special projects, and then immediately take a portion of it to special projects and pay off these debts. These are all of the debts that the city has exclusively that the city can pay at this point in time without incurring a penalty.
Mayor, would you like that read by title?
Please.
This is an ordinance of the City of Littleton, Colorado, amending ordinance number 18, series of 2008, known as the Annual Appropriation Bill for all municipal purposes of the City of Littleton, counties of Arapahoe, Jefferson, and Douglas, State of Colorado, for the fiscal year beginning January 1, 2009, and ending December 31, 2009.
Thank you. May I have a motion to approve the one?
Doug, could I ask a clarifying question before we approve the motion? Suzanne, would you look at, under the legal opinion on page 1 of the communication, the very last line down there says April 17th. Is that correct? Are we dealing with March 17th?
We were dealing with April 17th. That would be 30 days from final reading. Typically, our ordinances go into effect 7 days after final, but 30 days would allow us to get past the point of any referendum or 106 appeal.
Okay.
And that's the date also that Mr. Farman and his staff calculated the payoff dates. So there was a minor technical reason for doing that also.
Okay, thank you.
Motion, please.
I'll move we approve consent agenda item B.
Second.
Any discussion? Council ready to vote?
Yes, I want to discuss this.
Okay.
I would like to say to the folks out there in Littleton that this is one of those things that you very rarely see happen around the metropolitan area or anywhere else, where, especially this time of year, that we are able to go ahead and pay off some of our debts. So I'm pretty proud of the city of Littleton and what they're doing to alleviate some of the costs to the city. So this is pretty nice. That's it.
Thank you. Further discussion? Council ready to vote?
The vote is 7 in favor. The motion's approved.
Okay, that takes us to item 7A, which I pulled, and that's because I forgot to try and amend the agenda and take it off. This is a first reading on an ordinance that would substantially change the sewer ordinances that we have. I have a number of questions and comments that I need to get together with Suzanne and Charlie. What I'm suggesting is that we postpone this to the 17th on first reading, and then we can get the corrected version in front of us and then go ahead and send it through the process there. So I move that we postpone 7A until March 17th.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion on the date? Council ready to vote?
The vote is 7 in favor. The motion's approved.
Okay. That takes us to the first of, I believe it's 5 ordinances on second reading. The first one is an ordinance on the City Council enacting a section in the City Code pertaining to possession, manufacture, sale, or delivery or advertisement of drug paraphernalia. If you'll read that by title, please.
This is an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Littleton, Colorado, enacting Section 6-4-37 of the City Code pertaining to the possession, manufacture, sale, delivery, or advertisement of drug paraphernalia. Council, this ordinance was initiated by Heather Coogan, the Chief of Police. Essentially, what it does is bring us in line with a similar state statute regarding drug paraphernalia. Currently, the City Code does regulate possession of marijuana, but it does not regulate the counterpart, possession of the paraphernalia.
This is a public hearing. First, any questions for staff?
This is the first time I read this. What is corrected?
Council, I gave you that because earlier last week I had a conversation with Mayor Clark about an amendment he wanted to propose. The amendment was complicated enough that it would have been difficult for him to make it on the floor and have you be able to see what it looks like. So I went ahead and did a copy so that you would have it in front of you, anticipating that when he made that motion, you would have a reference.
This is a public hearing. That means that anyone in the public that wishes to address us on this issue can do so. If you do want to, come on down now, please. State your name. Okay. Let's get a motion on the floor, and then we can have some discussion, and I have an amendment I'd like to propose.
I move that the ordinance prohibiting the possession of drug paraphernalia be approved on second reading, posted on the city's website, at the Littleton City Center, Beebens Library, and the municipal courthouse, and that the council president be authorized to affix his signature thereto.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve the ordinance prohibiting the possession of drug paraphernalia. Council, when this came before us on first reading, one of my first questions was the penalty for this, which is the standard city penalty of up to $1,000 and up to a year in jail. And that concerned me because the penalty for marijuana possession is only $100. So what we would do if we had enacted this, or if we enact this as it sits with us right now, is if somebody is cited for a marijuana cigarette, it's $100. But if they're cited for the roach clip that holds a cigarette, it's up to $1,000 and a year in jail. So when I discussed this with Suzanne, in part of the conversation, we ended up batting around some other issues with this and the reasoning that the city attorney's office has for wanting to do this. And correct me if I put these words in your mouth. But part of the concern is the state law right now requires juveniles, but not adults, that get cited for marijuana possession to have the driver's license suspended for 3 months. And while apparently the marijuana possession does not appear on the record and appear on the CBI record, the license suspension does. And many job applications ask that question now. So the city attorney's office was desirous of having something that they could plea possession into when it was appropriate. And it needs to be related to what the original incident is. And so when we talked through this, what seemed reasonable to do was to redefine paraphernalia as containers or other objects used in storing or concealing cannabis as defined by the section 6434, which is the section that defines cannabis. That basically means that paraphernalia will be anything that contains marijuana, that's actually containing marijuana. To then also add a clause in here that sets the penalty at $100, and then to remove all the other clauses. Because frankly, we don't run meth through the city court. We don't run cocaine through the city court. We basically run, the only drug that we basically run through is marijuana. So this would be creating a definition of paraphernalia that would be applicable for, as far as we can think, every possession, and removing all of the ones that are non-pertinent to that. And so I move to amend subsection 1 to delete "or the laws of the state," further delete subsections 2 through 4, enact a new subsection 2 to read "drug paraphernalia is defined as containers and other objects used in storing or concealing cannabis as defined by section 6434 of the City Code," and to enact a new subsection 3 to read "penalty. Persons convicted of this subsection 1 shall be subject to a fine not to exceed $100.
Where are you reading from?
That's not what we've got in front of us.
Well, what you have is the ordinance that has the result of this. What I have is the motion that would amend what we did on first reading to what you have with all the strikeouts in it.
We have two ordinances that are identical.
They're identical.
Exactly alike.
Well, the one that you should have with all the strikeouts.
Oh, is that what I have? I'm sorry.
You should all have one with a strikeout.
Oh, thanks, Doug.
Sorry. This might make it clear.
Do-overs.
The two aren't identical that you do have, they have minor changes on them, the one did. And I
Sorry, I thought that you all had that on your
I have my copy.
your podiums. So now that you have it in front of you.
Now, would you repeat what you just said so it would make a little more sense to us?
Okay. I'll redo the motion now that you have it in front of you, because what the motion is to change what we had on first reading, which is this sheet of paper without the strikeouts, to what it would be with the strikeouts, and then the addition of number 3 on the third page right above section 2. So to repeat the motion, I move to amend subsection 1 to delete "or the laws of the state," further to delete subsections 2 through 4, which you can see is struck out, and enact a new subsection 2, which looks like the F on there, to read "drug paraphernalia is defined as containers and other objects used in storing or concealing cannabis as defined by section 6-4-34 of the City Code," and to enact a new subsection 3, which is on page 3 on yours right above where it says section 2, to read "penalty. Persons convicted of this subsection 1 shall be subject to a fine not to exceed $100.
Second.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded to amend the main motion to do all that stuff I just said. Is there discussion?
Yes. I think there's not quite enough in there. I don't know too much about using drugs, certainly illegal ones, but it seems to me what you're amending doesn't cover wrappers. If people use a wrapper and the ingesting, you know, what one could use to induce the drug into the system. And in the old days, all I ever saw, I think, except in films, was people who rolled their own. And I don't know if anybody does it anymore, but I guess somebody might. So it's not storing, it's not doing that part. It seems to me it's an additional piece.
Could it be a container?
I don't think you'd call it a container in the usual sense.
Not in the usual sense, no.
Well, yeah, but I think we don't want to get into legal debate on this is not a container. It's in one sense, it's a holder, but it's not a container.
Ms. City Attorney?
Or maybe the chief has got insight here.
If the purpose of enacting this ordinance is to give a counterpart charge or to give some kind of plea bargaining ability to my office, then the charge only has to be somehow related to the original charge that you're pleading from. So whether or not, I'm not sure that the judge, and he's here, so I'm not, maybe I shouldn't be saying this, but I'm not sure if he's going to get in the nuance of what the container is, whether it's a piece of paper or a plastic storage bin, if he's doing it only for the purpose of accepting a plea bargain. There just has to be some kind of relationship to the initial charge. And to say that, I just mean you can't change cannabis to disorderly conduct, and you can't change it to something that has nothing to do with the charge. And that's why we settled on the container or other object, because I think that the paper, even though it's just a piece of paper, could be considered a container, just like your grocery bag. Or I'm just not sure he's going to, I mean, I don't know if Judge Kimmel could speak to that, but when you're accepting a plea bargain, I think the standard is a little bit less than when you're actually charging it. But I know police also have a different take on this entire amendment, so they may want to speak to that.
It looks like the chief does want to speak to that. You want to come down?
Yes, and I'd also like to ask Officer Lynch.
Okay.
Pull the microphone around.
Chief, pull the mic toward you so they can pick it up.
Okay. We asked for this ordinance because it directly impacts a lot of the work by the SET team and what happens on the street in our contacts. And we mirrored this after the state law because we are a number of contacts that we thought were important. From our perspective, we would not want this to be limited to marijuana. We contact a number of people on the street that have crack pipes. So in terms of containers, that we're talking about crack pipes, we're talking about ways to deliver heroin, we're talking about syringes, that type of object. We went back and looked at our records, and we charged this about 200 times over the last 5 years into county court. So we'd like to have another vehicle to use that, to address that. And Officer Lynch is on the SET team, and she could talk about what they actually encounter on the street and why this has come up.
Thank you. My name is Brian Lynch. I've been a Littleton police officer for 20 years. I'm currently assigned to the special enforcement team, and some of you have been out riding with us and have seen what we do. One of the things that we do is street-level drug enforcement, but we also respond to other issues that concern people in our neighborhoods. So as far as this is concerned, you know, we're talking about, is the purpose for a vehicle for plea bargaining, or is the purpose really for enforcement of possession of drug paraphernalia? And as the chief said, we're not only dealing with the paraphernalia, the marijuana-related paraphernalia. We contact a large number of people who are involved in methamphetamine distribution and use, people occasionally for cocaine distribution and use, and people who use heroin or distribute heroin. And they may often have the paraphernalia with them, but they may not have the drug on them. They may have already used it. They may be going to buy it. And we may be contacting them in those situations where they don't necessarily have the drug, but they do have the paraphernalia. And having our a city ordinance dealing with paraphernalia will give us the flexibility to deal with those kinds of situations. And a couple of issues that I wanted to address about it is neighboring jurisdictions, including Greenwood Village, Inglewood, Sheridan, Cherry Hills, and Lone Tree, all have prohibit possession of drug paraphernalia. As the chief said, the law is not new. This has been a state statute for a long time, and we've been writing tickets for it for a long time, but we've had to write them into county court because we don't have our own ordinance. The statutory language of the original ordinance as proposed by the city attorney mirrors that of the statute, the state statute, which has already withstood legal challenges. So if we change the ordinance, then we may be facing some legal challenges to the language because it is different from that has been approved by the state. Then also, in my opinion, this won't appreciably increase the number of calls for officers or cases for the municipal court, because we most often encounter this. We don't go out specifically looking for people with drug paraphernalia, but we do encounter it on many of the municipal level calls that we go on disturbances, on noise complaints, on curfew violations, suspicious activity, those kinds of things. And when we contact people for those kinds of things, then we may find that they have drug paraphernalia. So it makes enforcement more efficient if we can write both of those violations into the same court. Say we were going to write somebody for disturbing the peace and they had drug paraphernalia, we would either have to not charge one of the charges and write one into county court or write one into municipal court and then kind of ignore the other one. So this gives us the opportunity to write both of the charges into our municipal court, where the court can go by the community standards and the direction from council and from the city as to how to handle it. I mean, you've given the court direction on how you want it to handle various offenses, and this way it gives the control to our judge and our city on how we want these kinds of violations handled. So it really makes our jobs as police officers more consistent, more flexible, and more efficient if we can write this kind of violation into the municipal court. And I have to say that every officer that I've mentioned to that you're considering adopting this ordinance, they're all very pleased with the possibility because it will make their jobs easier and more efficient if we have our own ordinance on this.
Questions?
I have a question. So you would prefer the ordinance, the original ordinance. In the original ordinance, there's a $1,000 fine. In the revised ordinance, there's a $100 fine.
You know, honestly, as far as the fine, I'm not as concerned with that as with the conduct that's prohibited. I think the fine or sentencing is up to the court, and so Judge Kimmel and our other judges are definitely, we have confidence in them and how they handle different cases and how they sentence. So that's not a big issue for us.
Okay.
We just want the enforcement ability.
Further questions? Council, a decade or so ago, 2 police chiefs ago, I was on the South Metro Drug Task Force Property Confiscation Board. And that board was set up because laws that were passed that said that somebody that was arrested for drug possession, the police could confiscate other items that they thought were materially related to the drug offense. And that law apparently descended from a number of federal laws that were originally created so that when they caught drug lords, they could confiscate their houses and their Ferraris and their boats and things like this. What was happening on the South Metro Drug Task Force is the people that really were doing drugs or dealing drugs realized what was happening with the law, and they all drove beater cars because they knew that if they got arrested, the car would be confiscated. And it took more money to sell and dispose of the car than what we got from it. But there was an incident where a woman was arrested for cocaine possession, and for some reason her husband's black powder rifle and pistols were confiscated. It came before the board, and to Bruce Beckman's everlasting credit, he challenged what the materiality was of black powder, pistols, and rifles to cocaine possession. Because frankly, those of you that know about black powder, it's something you have to put in, you cram it in the top. It's not really a weapon that you use for drug-related offenses. And I sat in that committee and listened to the attorney from the district attorney's offices, and that was before the current district attorney declared that it was absolutely material to the case. My concern here is possessing drugs is one thing. Possessing items that may or may not be used for drugs is something different, especially when those items are defined fairly broadly as blenders, bowls, containers, spoons, and mixing devices intended for use or designed for use in compounding controlled substances, because those are the same blenders, bowls, containers, spoons, and mixing devices that are used to make cakes and brownies and things like this. You get down to water pipes, And when I went to my nephew's graduation up at CSU, apparently the rage in college is to use water pipes for smoking tobacco. I don't understand it. That's what they do. But that would also be defined as paraphernalia. So my concern is that drug abuse is a problem. But at times, our enforcement or our zeal to enforcement sometimes oversteps what I think the boundaries of reasonableness is. And if the state wants to enact laws on paraphernalia and the state legislature doesn't particularly want to distinguish between blenders, bowls, containers, and spoons or water pipes, that doesn't mean that we have to be a part of that. So I offer that as an argument for the amended motion that sits in front of you.
I also heard you talking about the long-term consequences of the penalties that come from this.
Well, as my wife points out, juveniles, one of the characteristics of juveniles is they don't use the same reasoning power that adults do, which is why most of the time the penalties for juveniles are different. The court system for juveniles are different. Yet what the state has enacted on cannabis is a stricter penalty for juveniles than adults, which, as my wife pointed out to me, makes no sense. Why would you have a more strict penalty on a group, a subset of the population that you know doesn't do fully formed thinking? And we are becoming so concerned about being hard on crime that we are starting to enact all of these things that follow people through their whole lives. So once again, that's why I propose the changes that's in the motion in front of us for amending this.
Can I ask the attorney a question? Sure. As originally drafted, this ordinance is following what's allowed in state law that puts it into a higher court than our municipal court. Am I correct in that assumption?
Well, it puts it into a county court. I'm not sure that would be considered a higher court, but different court.
Different court, all right. But it still follows what's allowed in state law. So if our people in uniform pick somebody up, they can cite them into the county court under any parts of this as exists now.
Right, because this is as it exists in the state, except for the penalty provision.
Councilman, just let me point out, though, that I don't know where you were going with that question, but we've had other instances of coming to the council so that we can cite into municipal court, because frequently they can get somebody in front of a judge quicker. Many times the county courts particularly are very backed up, very jammed up with DUI cases and all kinds of things. So I don't know, I didn't understand quite the context of your question, but I know the motivation from the police department's point of view is very often that they can get some sort of action out in our municipal court quicker in a more timely manner than if they have to wait to get on a docket in a county court.
Then I'm going to ask the chief a question. We saw this tonight for the first time. Have you seen the strikeouts that are in this ordinance?
Yes, the attorney shared those with me this week.
And if those strikeouts pass tonight, what kind of inhibitions is that going to put on your ability to do the job that you're doing now?
Well, I think what we'll end up doing is charging most people to county court, which then leaves us with that dilemma when we encounter them on a disturbance. Do we ignore one charge and go into the municipal court, or charge the county court and go for the paraphernalia? So it's that trying to come up with the trade-off, which I don't think is appropriate for the officers to do. We should leave that to the courts to decide which charge, and leave that for the plea bargaining aspects of it. As a marijuana, that's just one thing we encounter on the street. As I said, we come across the crack pipes, we come across methamphetamine, syringes, a number of things like that. If it's serious, the officers aren't going to look the other way. They're going to do it to county court. But that takes away one of our tools to deal with that quickly on the street. County court is more complicated, more paperwork, and As Officer Lynch said, we have full confidence in Judge Kimmel to appropriately look at the situation and impose what he thinks is responsible.
Thank you.
Further discussion?
Yeah, so I'm hearing these things coming and going. So you're saying you like the short version or the long version?
I prefer the one that mirrors state law that we currently use
Okay.
into county
I
court.
thought you were saying
I
that,
do not
but-
like the marijuana only.
Okay. There for a second, I thought maybe you wound up saying the reverse, but thank you.
John?
Yeah, question for either Judge Kimmel or Suzanne. When the paraphernalia is used as a plea bargain issue, does it make difference which variation of the ordinance you're looking at?
No, what you're doing is, in the possession ordinance, there's a clause that says it causes the revocation of the license. And under the state code, it doesn't matter if it's the state charge or a municipal counterpart. Now, the paraphernalia doesn't carry that same thing. So if you change the charge to the paraphernalia, then it gets it out of, it doesn't matter which part of the paraphernalia, nothing within the paraphernalia in the state code requires a revocation of a driver's license. So you could do any of these types of charges.
Okay, thank you.
Further discussion on the amendment? Okay, council ready to vote? The vote is on the amendment to the main ordinance. It has all the strikeouts and the other stuff the chief doesn't like. A yes would amend the ordinance, a no will not.
The vote is 3 in favor with Councilwoman Cole, Councilman Taylor, Councilwoman Brinkman, and Councilman Trujillo voting no. The amendment is defeated.
Okay. I'd like to propose one more amendment, and that is simply the penalty clause, changing the penalty clause to the $100. And that's the addition of Section 3, which would say penalty, persons convicted of this subsection shall be subject to a fine not to exceed $100.
Why?
Pardon?
Why?
Because if you don't have that in, you have then once again enacted a paraphernalia that is and can be used related to marijuana that has up to a $1,000 fine when the actual drug itself has a maximum of a $100 fine.
I'm going to second your motion.
Okay.
You need that for your discussion.
Thank you.
But I do have a question for the attorney.
All right.
Suzanne, if this motion passes at the $100 fine level and a person is picked up subsequently, second or third time, are there other penalties that can be imposed that would go above the $100 fine?
No. And under the state law, it's written this way too, with the penalty, the maximum is $100. Under the state law, I believe the minimum and the maximum is $100.
For the paraphernalia?
I believe that's how it's written, minimum and maximum. I think we've written both of ours as just the maximum, but it's a set charge, and beyond that, you could only charge them with court costs and victims' assistance.
Excuse
And
me.
just for clarification, it would actually be subsection 5, the penalty, because we wouldn't have gotten rid of 3.
Jim seconded it.
Oh.
I knew the question. Further discussion on the amendment to change the penalty to $100.
I'm still trying to find in one of the versions here where that penalty piece is. I find it in one, but I'm not finding it in 2 others, which means I'm missing it.
No, that means it was not in there. And the standard, which if it's not in there, the standard city penalty is up to $1,000 because that's the maximum that a municipality can fine, and up to a year in jail.
So you're amending, and what's there are all these numbers. Some are Roman numerals, some are Arabic,
Right.
some are something else.
This is
So-
going to be a new subsection 5, and it's going to read just like Mayor Clark's prior amendment on the strikeout that was the old subsection 3.
Which is persons convicted of this subsection shall be subject to a fine not to exceed $100.
Right. So if you look at his strikeout version, it
That's
would
where,
have...
that's where
But
it's,
we're not dealing with the strikeout version. That's what's, I think,
No,
confusing.
so we would put a new subsection 5 in your full version.
Then where's subsection 4?
Yeah, we go to 3.
Is there not a 4? 4 is definition. Drug paraphernalia, 1 is possession, 2 is manufactured, 3 is
the
advertisement.
subsection would go above section 2 bold? Is that where it goes?
No, it just go at the end of the ordinance. 4 is definition, and then 5 would be penalty.
It would be right above the bold-face section 2, and it would say 5 parentheses.
Right.
And then it would say penalty, colon,
Yeah. but
penalty is not to exceed. Penalty for any violation of this section shall
what
not
I
exceed
just
$100.
said. Yeah, that's what I just said. Okay.
Okay?
That's where I said is at least
So
Jim and I are
Arabic
agreeing.
numeral
So
5.
Okay, so we think we know where it's going.
Okay.
And so this would be the $100 max.
Yes. Further discussion on the amendment to the main motion. Okay, council ready to vote? This is on the amendment that adds a section that sets the maximum penalty at $100.
The vote is 6 in favor, with Councilwoman Brinkman voting no. The amendment is approved.
Okay, we're now back to the main motion, which was the one originally presented without all the strikeouts, but with the addition of a maximum penalty as a section 5 of $100. Discussion on the main motion. Council ready to vote?
The vote is 6 in favor, with Councilman Clark voting no. The motion is approved and the ordinance is approved.
Okay. We got through the first one. Item 8B. If you can read that by title, please.
Thank you. This is an ordinance of the City of Littleton, Colorado, amending City Code Section 6-4-2 pertaining to criminal mischief. Again, Chief Coogan is the initiator. This ordinance brings us back into line with the state statute. The jurisdictional limit went up from $400 to $1,000, and it further clarifies the language to be in line with the state statute regarding driver's license revocations for, I think, graffiti and damage to motor vehicles.
Questions for staff? This is also a public hearing. If anyone wants to come down and speak to us about this item, now would be the time. Okay, council, motion.
I move for the adoption of item 8B.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved that the ordinance amending Littleton City Code Section 6-4-2 pertaining to criminal mischief be approved on second reading, posted on the city's website, the city center, Bemis Library, and the municipal courthouse, and the council president be authorized to affix his signature thereto. Discussion. Council ready to vote?
Vote is 7 in favor. The motion's approved.
Okay. On a roll. 8C, if you can read that by title, please.
This is an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Littleton, Colorado, enacting Section 6-4-36 of the City Code pertaining to the dispensing or sale of alcoholic beverages to any person under 21.
Questions for staff?
Would you tell us what the corrected version is so we don't have to read both of them simultaneously?
See, this one, where under C, where it said the affirmative defense to this section, the word may was struck down on the very bottom line, and then give was changed to gives, and permits was changed to permits. I think that's it.
Thank you.
Okay, this is also a public hearing. If anyone wants to come down and talk to us about this ordinance, now's the time to do that. Okay, council, a motion?
Make a motion that the ordinance to amend the city code to make it unlawful to sell or dispense alcohol to any person under the age of 21 be approved on second reading, posted at City Center, Bemis Library, Municipal Courthouse, and on the city's website, and the council president be authorized to affix his signature thereto.
Second.
Second goes to John. Discussion? Council ready to vote?
The vote is 7 in favor. The motion's approved.
8D, if you can read that by title, please.
This is an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Littleton, Colorado, enacting Section 9-1-12 and amending Section 9-1-2 of the City Code pertaining to the decriminalization of traffic infractions. This item was actually initiated by my office, and we have worked in tandem with the courts, with Judge Kimmel and with Chief Coogan in drafting this.
Would you spend a minute or two just explaining to the audience what the purpose of this is and what it does?
Sure. Currently within the City of Littleton, all traffic violations are lumped together as violations. They all carry with them the maximum penalties as set by city code of up to 1 year in jail and up to a $1,000 fine. Any failure to appear on a traffic violation within the City of Littleton results in a warrant. What this ordinance does is divide traffic violations into different categories. There's a category of an offense and a category of an infraction. An infraction would be a lesser charge, a 4-point speeding, a 0-point seatbelt, a stop sign violation, that type of thing, where an offense would be a more serious charge like careless or reckless or no insurance. By dividing them into those two categories, traffic infractions will now be handled as civil matters, which means that if a person weren't to appear, there would be no warrant. Instead, a default judgment would enter against them, and the charge would be reported to Department of Motor Vehicles, who would place a hold on their driver's license until they paid the default judgment. And within the council communication, I tried to do just a quick chart of what the differences would be. And infractions would only have a maximum penalty of a $1,000 fine, whereas offenses would remain a $1,000 fine and 90 days in jail. And they're on infractions, because they would be handled civilly, these would all be trials to the court, whereas offenses would have trials to a court or a jury. We anticipate that this would be a more efficient use of court time. It would also allow us to institute a plea bargaining by mail system where we could review tickets in advance, send out letters to people indicating that they qualified for this plea bargain, and if people chose to send that in, they would no longer have to make an appearance in court. The way it's currently structured, because they're all lumped together, anybody who gets a traffic ticket in Littleton has to reappear in Littleton, whether it's to pay at the counter or to see a judge, but there is no mechanism to do a plea bargain by mail.
Any questions?
I have a question. Under financial details, you say changes to service levels may impact future budgets. Can you elaborate on that?
Well, that was Doug Farman's magic language to give me. And that's because we anticipate that we will study the efficiencies of the court after we institute this. And so we would like to take numbers, say, from January prior to the time we institute it and compare them to numbers in April or May and see what the differences are on the number of people who are appearing in court. Now, I know that for the clerk's office, anticipating that this ordinance is in front of you, they have decided to hold off on hiring a position because potentially this saves them a lot of time in entering warrants, which is a very time-consuming process to coordinate that with the police department. So if there's 100 less warrants a week, that may save the staff time of one person, because now they'll just be reported to DMV rather than going through that process. So it's hard to tell right now what the changes may be. We anticipate that it will be more efficient, but we really need to look at the numbers once we see the process and we see how responsive people are to the plea by mail. And then once that happens, it's my understanding that council was planning on initiating a study of the efficiencies
Because we would actually then be collecting lower fines.
This has to do with the clerks, the staffing of the court clerks, Councilwoman. This is not tied
Right, but
to-
if we do a plea bargain where people can.
It could have some effect on revenue, on the
Okay.
revenue side of it, but I think
Because
this
that's
is
typically
intended-
what it is. If the ticket's $100 and you do a plea bargain, they drop down. So we could see okay.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
this comment has more to do with the staffing levels of the
So
clerks
the-
and just
The judge
Ticket
said,
fee would
the judge,
say that-
just for a second, the judge said that that's not true, that they charge the same amount for the plea bargain. Is that what you said? The fee is the same, the
Okay.
points are reduced. Sorry, I wanted to repeat that. So
Yeah, thank you, but it doesn't have to do with court revenue, it has to just do with the clerks.
And Chief, looks like you want to speak again on this?
Yes, I would. I would just like to tell you that the police department is greatly in favor of this. When someone doesn't appear in court because appearing in court on an infraction would mean missing work, which is common these days, a person has to take off from court to go to, or from their job to go to work, then they don't appear, there's a warrant issued for their arrest. It's very time-consuming for the police department to arrest someone for a very minor infraction, take them out to the county jail, book them in. It's hours of time that an officer's off the street, and then the impact to our community is huge, that that person is in jail, they've got to post bond. It costs a lot of money for the county to incarcerate that person and process that person. So we wholly support this on the minor violations. Clearly, we don't want anyone to disregard the court or their authority. We'd like people to appear, but we think that the impact to the community and certainly to the police department and our ability to stay on the street and stay in service is critical. So we would completely support this.
Further questions? Jim?
The clarification of the reason why we got a new 8D tonight is all contained in 1702 penalties of the traffic code, whereas the word violate was taken out of the original
Right.
one and
Yeah.
commit was put in, and that's the only change I've seen. Thank you.
Okay, this is also a public hearing. If anyone wishes to come down and address us about this issue, now would be the time. Okay, council, a motion.
I move the public hearing be closed, that the ordinance to amend the Littleton City Code to decriminalize traffic infractions be approved on second reading, posted at the City Center, Bemis Library, Municipal Courthouse, and the city's website, and that the council president be authorized to affix his signature
Second.
thereto.
Whoops. Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve the ordinance to amend the city code to decriminalize traffic infractions. Discussion. Council ready to vote?
Vote is 7 in favor, the motion's approved.
Okay, that takes us to item 8E. If you could read that by title, please.
Thank you. This is an ordinance of the City of Littleton, Colorado, enacting City Code Section 6-4-38 pertaining to the offense of menacing.
Questions for staff?
No revised.
I believe this is also one that just allows it to be routed through city court, municipal court.
Right. It follows the state statute language. However, we don't currently have a charge for menacing, and this would allow us to have local control over those charges.
Further questions? This is also a public hearing. If anyone wants to come down and address us on this issue, that would be the time. Okay, council, a motion.
I move that the ordinance to amend the city code to make the offense of menacing an offense for local prosecution be approved on second reading, posted at the City Center, Bemis Library, Municipal Courthouse, and on the city's website, and the council president be authorized to affix his signature thereto.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve the ordinance to amend city code to make the offense of menacing an offense for local prosecution. Discussion. Council ready to vote?
The vote is 7 in favor, the motion's approved.
Okay. That takes us to item 9A. Want to present this, Tim?
I'm going to let Tim Nims, our museum director, present this item to this council.
Okay.
Good evening, Council. Item 9A on your agenda this evening is a joint recommendation from the Museum Board and the Fine Arts Committee to change the name of the museum from Littleton Historical Museum to Littleton Museum with the tagline History, Art, and Culture. The premise of the argument is outlined for you in the Council communication, but in a nutshell, the members of the two committees believe that the proposed name will better reflect the multifaceted mission of the museum and will acknowledge the city's long-standing commitment to history, art, and cultural programming. The recommendation from the staff is that the name change become effective September 1. That would give us 6 months to work through branded merchandise in the store, also stationery, letterhead, business cards, that sort of thing, brochures, that sort of thing. By doing that, we'd eliminate the waste of early disposal and early replacement. So we think that would pretty well negate the cost of any sort of thing in that area. The main hard cost is going to be the replacement of the sign on Gallup at the entrance to the museum. I've got a couple of mock-ups of potential changes.
You flip it around. There you go, Tim.
And I would emphasize that these are just design mock-ups. Councilwoman Brinkman was not enormously excited about the sign, but it's hard to do anything really exciting with signs, I'm afraid. So this gives you an idea sort of the concept, though, of the new name. The hard cost is estimated at $3,500, and that would be absorbed from the departmental budget for the museum. It's important to note, too, because this is a question we've gotten from a few community members, that this in no way diminishes the predominant role of history in the mission of the museum. It's always going to be history first and foremost, but it does. We do feel that the new name is more inclusive of our overall mission. The staff is supportive of this effort. I have also taken the opportunity to brief the Friends of the Littleton Library and Museum Board, and while they were very quick to note that they have no role whatsoever in governance, this is entirely council's decision, they are also in support of the move. Rosalie Summers Benson, the chair of the Museum Board, is here with us this evening. Joyce Volpe, who chairs Fine Arts, is not available because of family illness, but Carol Brejak, a member of Fine Arts Committee, is here this evening, and I would certainly be happy to answer any questions, and I believe that the two committee members would also.
Questions?
I do have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
I surely think that what the name change is reflecting what you do, but the current statement of the role mission is a little more narrow. So are you anticipating modifying that a bit?
We would envision taking an expanded mission statement to the Museum Board for their review and then forward it on to council.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? A motion?
I move that the recommendation of the Museum Board and the Fine Arts Committee be accepted, and the name of the Littleton Historical Museum be changed to Littleton Museum, effective September 1st, 2009.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to recommend that the Museum Board and Fine Art Committee recommendation be accepted and that the name changed from the Littleton Historic Museum to the Littleton Museum. Discussion.
I think this is something that probably goes back, as far as the name change, 7 or 8 years. And also, I think it conveys the total purpose of the museum. So I can certainly support this.
So you're suggesting there's a history to this?
Yes, there is. It goes back to really LaPaglia's study that was done very early in this century. So I think it makes a lot of sense to finally do it.
Further discussion?
I think it makes sense. I agree with John.
Council ready to vote?
The vote is 6 in favor, with Councilman Trujillo voting no. The motion is approved.
Okay. That takes us to item 9B, which is a artisans market, Old Town Market. Mr. Bloston.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. We have before you tonight a request from some downtown merchants to conduct an artisans festival on 4 Saturdays during the summer and early fall. I think the council communication explains the details of it. They would like to use the city sidewalks and they would like to sell space in order to do that. If you have questions concerning the details of this proposal, Peggy Cooper from Details, pun intended, is here to answer questions along with her committee. She can probably do a better job than I can explaining what the intentions are of the artisans market and how it will operate.
I have a couple questions. It says here, in two places, it mentions 400 attendees. Is that per month or total?
I could have Peggy address that. Come on.
I actually think that'd be per month.
Okay.
And definitely that's just an estimate because we're not sure exactly how many people are going to come, once it gets going, so it could increase each month.
Okay. And then in the second paragraph, it says, third sentence, workout parking. And then down in conflicts and complications, it states that there could be some parking issues, but the Old Town Market Group will be doing their best to deal with that problem. That's a lot of vagueness.
Actually, we don't foresee that there's going to be any customer parking problems. I don't know if they're referring to we need parking for the vendors. And that's why we were looking to park here at the city on those Saturdays, because there's nobody parking here. I actually came and counted on the Saturday, but so we were looking to use the actual parking here for the vendors to park here, so they wouldn't take up any customer parking down in the downtown Littleton area.
Okay, so those two comments about parking were related to your vendors' vehicles?
That's what I'm thinking that Charlie has meant by that. Is that true, Charlie?
That's partially correct, Council, and also the fact that when you bring this kind of event to downtown Littleton, I have to mention parking as a potential issue. It would be inappropriate not to do that. Whether the vendors park here at the city center parking lot, which is mostly vacant on Saturdays, or they go north to the county parking lot, and participants or people who are coming to the festival would like to park on the city streets, it always creates a little bit more conflict than what we've had in the past.
A comment on that, too. Have we looked at ACC? Because being on a weekend, is there any, they've got that lot over there on Alamo that's...
Actually, we did talk to ACC about parking, even actually the vendor parking there. They would charge us actually $500 each Saturday to do that. I don't know if you're looking for customer parking there or for our vendor parking, but... Customer parking?
What Charlie was mentioning.
Okay. We didn't look into it for that, no.
Then my other question was the event time is from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m.?
Correct.
So it starts at 8 a.m. on Saturday?
Yes.
Okay, and in your experience, that's
normally typically when a market starts.
Okay.
Like the market that they have in Aspen Grove starts at 8 a.m. There's ballpark market that's in Denver. It starts at 8 a.m. It's just kind of a typical time that a market starts in the morning.
And this is not a farmer's market?
No, it's not a farmer's market. It'd be more for antiques, art, pottery, wearables, all sorts of items versus just one specific. We really want it to be diverse so that we're going to bring down a whole array of different people, not just people that are looking for specific things.
Okay, and then just one final question. On the motion we have, it is to approve this year's market. Would we need to approve future year markets, or?
If you want to make it in perpetual, you can do that. It's just, I didn't know if this was going to create issues that may want to come back to council before you would do it again.
So if we
there are
approve
issues
this,
we did not foresee and is explained here and something happens, I don't know what that could be, but possibly. I believe you should have the authority then the second year to say, no, this didn't work.
Yeah, and I just to clarify, I think for this is a fairly extensive use of the public sidewalk. we would assume that there would need to be at least a council opportunity if any issues were to come up, if you were to hear things, how things go this year. You know, certainly for this kind of a commitment of the public right-of-way, we would anticipate at least keeping open the option of bringing that back to you so that this is not just perceived as an automatic approval by the council.
Okay, thanks.
Also, in following years, it will actually start in May. The only reason it's not starting in May this year is because of the construction that will happen in downtown Littleton on Main Street. So that's why we opted not to start it till July.
Okay.
And that's another reason why we're having the market, is because we're going to be lacking a lot of customers coming down because of that construction. We're hoping to draw people back into the downtown area by having this event. So.
Further questions? Jim?
A couple of things. As far as parking goes, we don't put any kind of restrictions at all on Wild on Littleton or Western Welcome Week for their parking for both the vendors as well as the general public. Secondly, I think this is very exciting. I think that this is one of the things that we need to draw people to the main street of Littleton. The Paris Street Market started, our antique market started there and has moved on to Aspen Grove, and I think that putting something like this once a month in downtown will be nothing but a boon to downtown, and would like to see it really go forward.
One of the things that we've done too is where when Paris was in downtown Littleton, it was all segregated in the bank parking lot and in Ranke's parking lot. Our vision is, you know, to have it up and down the sidewalks so people are going to walk all the way around downtown Littleton and see everything that there is to offer. They can eat down there, because we're not going to actually serve food. We won't have any food vendors, but they will definitely have to walk all around downtown Littleton, and they'll see everything versus just coming to a parking lot.
Further questions?
Yes. I just want to thank Charlie Blosson. This is the first time I think I've ever heard him say that Littleton has a parking problem.
Or at least a
potential
potential
parking problem. Had your head in the sand for a long time, Charlie.
I have a question. Did I miss it in here? Have you surveyed the merchants downtown?
Say that again?
Have you surveyed the merchants downtown about this?
We have surveyed, we've talked to some merchants. We haven't surveyed them all. We do have a contract, which I think Charlie might have given to you. I did provide a contract to Charlie that we're going to go out to all the merchants, speak to them prior to the event. In fact, that will be happening as soon as you guys approve this. Yes?
Hi.
Hello.
I'm part of this as well. My name's Sue Coffey, and I'm one of the merchants in historic downtown Littleton. And we do have the support of Hoodlum, the Historic Downtown Littleton Merchants Association, because President Mark Bell is on board with this as well as the board members. So we do have that support. Everyone is really wanting to see more business come to downtown Littleton.
When the farmers, I think it was the farmers market was going on, I heard complaints from some of the merchants that the people that came in for the farmers markets were selling the same products that some of the downtown businesses were selling. Is this going to have that same problem? If you're selling art, don't we have art vendors, dealers downtown?
Well, actually, I'll give you a for instance. I mean, like Helen Rice with Willow, she's actually provided us probably like 60 of her own vendors from her own store, you know, that could possibly come down and have a booth at our market. You know, there's always going to be that chance we're going to have antique dealers down there, you know, and we have antique stores. It's like anything. I mean, we could bring in another shop down there that it's going to sell similar to somebody else down there. So we are going to try and monitor the amount of people or the amount of vendors that we bring in there so that they don't have a lot of competition. So let's say a pottery place, we're not going to bring in some really cheap pottery, you know, because we have a really nice pottery place down there, you know, so we would want to bring in something comparable or higher so not to undersell them.
Okay. Any further questions?
Yeah, I think it's a great idea because I'm down there spending money and finding downtown Littleton, but I wondered about their marketing and advertising. If you get 100 booths per Saturday at $90, you're going to have $9,000. Maybe you ought to buy some advertising. You got to get those people out there.
And, you know, we do plan to figure all that out. I mean, we're trying to do it as cost effective as possible, and actually we won't have a total of 100 because each merchant will have the opportunity also to have a booth out front.
Mm-hmm.
So maximum right now, we're figuring we might have be able to have 80 booths that we can sell per month. So we will do as much advertising as we can, and we've already designed our banner for across Main Street, and Charlie has approved that we can hang that up the week prior. So.
Well, you'll know after the first Saturday. I just don't think you got enough there to get people out.
Well, you know, and this is just coming from my own business. We base a lot of our advertising on word of mouth and just our good customer service and just, you know, telling people. If you tell one person and they tell one person and everybody keeps telling people, that's better advertisement that you're going to get from any newspaper, guaranteed.
Good luck to you.
Thank you.
Further questions or discussion?
Mr. Mayor, I move that the council approve the request for Old Town Market to hold their first artisans market in the summer of 2009.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve the request for the Old Time Market to hold the first artisans market in the summer of 2009. Discussion. Council ready to vote?
The vote is 7 in favor. The motion's approved.
Okay. That brings us to item, thank you, Dennis, 9D, which is, no, I'm sorry, I'm on the wrong section. 9C, which is a motion to renew the Rinke Brothers parking lot lease.
This is a renewal of the lease for 70 parking spaces at the Rinke lot that the city's had since 2001. It's the same terms as we had last year in 2008, with the exception that we dropped the attorney's fees to the lessor. It's a total of $22,100 for 11 months. It excludes the Western Welcome Week and also the period around Halloween when the store is exceptionally busy. It's used for long-term customer parking and as well as for employee parking downtown. Primary user is the post office.
Questions?
I have a question. Last year we agreed to escrow some money for snow plowing.
Great.
Did we use any of that money?
It's been an exceptionally dry year. As you know, so far we've had a bill for $187 for snow removal is all we've had.
Okay. Do we plow his whole lot?
We plow the entire lot, yeah, exactly. So I think that's the question that you may have.
Okay, so we plow, what percentage of his lot are parking spaces?
Probably about 60%. I'd say that we actually lease.
We have 60% of the spaces, okay.
Further questions?
Yes, a question about the contract. 3-2, on or before September 1, 2008, is that an error?
Yes, that should be September 9. I'm sorry. We'll have to correct that.
And I don't see in the contract, I like the way the contract is otherwise, I don't see the last paragraph detail on the first page of the cover sheet, council communication. The council communication says they'll use the $2,500. When that's used up for snow removal, then another $2,500 gets put in.
Correct.
So forth. I don't see that in the contract. I actually like the way the contract is worded that says we'll replace as needed rather than.
And actually, what we've got in the council communication is that we actually set aside that the $25 in the escrow account initially. We budgeted for an additional $2,500 if we need it, but we don't actually put it into escrow until it's actually would be needed.
Okay, well, the communication doesn't, I think, say it quite that way. But
okay.
I think you just said, I did check with Doug Farman today, we spent less than $200 so far. So we would put in, unless we get, the blizzards and so forth later this month, we'd put in enough to replenish up to $2,500?
We have $2,500 now. We would wait until the entire $2,500 was spent and then put in another $2,500 is my understanding of the way we would agree to do it. So we'd wait until we actually spent the entire 2,500 in that initial
Well,
escrow
if this
amount.
is a new contract, either then they need to give us back what wasn't used this year, or we would just put in enough to top it out at 2,500.
It's actually in our account, so it's not in their account, it's in the city account.
Well, I know
the
it's in
city's
an escrow, but still, it says, that's not what it's saying in here, though. So,
I'm not really sure why we're escrowing 2,500 when we have substantially more than that in reserves, but
Yeah,
that's what's in the contract.
right.
but
Symbolism
the general
counts
fund.
sometimes, Mayor.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, when
It was just a promise.
2008's contract expires, the 2008-9 contract expires, then the money comes out of escrow.
Right. Goes back to the general account,
Yeah.
general fund.
And then goes back in.
Then it goes back in under
Yeah.
the new contract. So when this year's contract expires, the escrow also will
Yeah.
be.
Probably costs us more money to keep track of the escrow than
but
it does to-
I was a little curious. I do all the shoveling at my house, and we haven't had over 4 inches in any snow this year that I've shoveled, and I don't think I've missed any. So I'm wondering, and I think this says the shoveling, the plowing doesn't occur until it's more than 4 inches. So is this maybe an expected more than 4 inches?
It's a good question.
I mean, it's not
Yeah.
like we're going to,
Right.
I'm going to fight over less than $200,
Right.
but
Yeah, I don't know,
if we'd had 10 snows
Sure.
of the same amount that was here, that starts adding up,
sure,
so.
it does. And we can certainly look at that again and see,
Yeah, and I'm not wanting
Why go to 3
people
inches
to
or 2
fall or
inches? Yeah,
slip or
sure.
whatever, so I just was a little curious when I learned we'd actually had to pay anything this year so far.
since we had such little, yeah.
And we don't pay, do we, during the period that we don't get to park there?
That's correct. It's a payment for the 11 months that we actually use it.
So we'd really like to wish that we get our blizzards during that time.
Correct. We wouldn't pay for snow removal during that period either, right? Exactly.
Further questions? Discussion? Council ready to make a motion? John, go ahead.
I move to renew the Ranke Brothers parking lease agreement to provide 70 parking spaces at the rate of $30 per space per month for 11 months, and to establish a $2,500 escrow account to be used as needed for reimbursing the lessor for snow removal for a total initial expenditure of $25,600.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to renew the Rinke Brothers parking lease agreement and reestablish the 2,500 escrow. Discussion. Council ready to vote?
The vote is 7 in favor. The motion's approved.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis. That brings us to 9D, a discussion of a MAI appraisal on 1101 West Mineral Avenue property.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we eliminate the West Mineral property for consideration of police facilities.
It's been moved to eliminate the Mineral Avenue property from consideration for the police facilities. Is there a second? I'll second that. Discussion.
One of the things that I think is very important is that we keep all of our city family together. We have that opportunity to do that, and I think we need to explore that very thoroughly before we start moving part of our departments out to a building that is larger than this building, unless we're planning to move the entire city hall out there, which I'm not for sure is a wise move. So I would just like to see us eliminate an off-site facility for the police department to move into.
Further discussion?
Point of order, I'm a little confused here. The discussion item on general business was whether or not was essentially to get an MAI appraisal on that. I think, That's one reason why I asked to move this to the discussion later, because I think this is a complicated issue. So I think if there were going to be a motion, it would be a motion to not get an appraisal if we're going to be dealing with this item. Otherwise, we need a different agenda item. I mean,
Okay, further discussion? The reason I seconded this is because in the workshop, our original decision was to make an offer for the 1101 West Mineral Avenue building for $3.2 million, which passed. And then the subsequent motion was to do, where is that? To do option 3, the standalone. Sorry, that's we're removing all of those. Where is yours?
The only other one we did was option 1.
Yes.
With an addition to add an EOC, expand the parking lot out front.
I'm sorry, that's on page 5, and that was contingent upon the outcome of the offer for the Mineral Avenue property. We've made the offer. The offer's been turned down. The counteroffer has come back at a level that we can't possibly move the police down. It's a 67,000 square foot building for a police department that currently has 96 positions in it. Our city center is only 48,000 square feet. And the memo that we got from Jim Woods was that they've scoped out 50,000 feet of the 67,000 square foot mineral building, and the 50,000 feet exceeds the size of the entire city center, which I think is a waste of money. John?
Yeah. At our workshop, we voted to transfer water fund money and spend between $3 and $6 million for a police facility. There is no way we can convert this building to a police facility, purchase it and convert it for less than $6 million. So I think we need to stay with what we agreed to at our workshop when we had a long discussion on police facilities, and proceed forward with a facility on this campus.
Tom?
No, I think Mr. Taylor said some right things there, and that we ought to start looking at the future. We may need that building and sell this building and come out, move everything over to Mineral Street and sell this building and come out real good. 'Cause I haven't heard the new price on the building, and I haven't heard the MAI appraisal on that building. So I don't think we're ready to turn it down. We turned down a couple of 3 other things at that workshop, but we didn't turn this one down.
Further discussion?
Well, I'd like to say something. You know, that building is, so what was the year that it was built? It was about 20 years old. So in my own building, what has happened is that everything has finally come to pass. I've had to go in and suddenly have to change this. That change meant that there had to be another change. You change one thing, then you're into a makeup air unit, then you're into a Ansel system, and it just goes on. And just for a small business like my own, you're looking at, with the addition of the roof on it, you're looking at probably 60, 70,000. It's only a 4,000 square building, but when these buildings start to deteriorate, and it's a very nice looking building, and I was impressed with it. My only problem is that I don't think that we've had enough information on it to really be able to make a decision at this time. I'd like to have more information as to, from the inspectors, and to know what in fact has to be accomplished to bring it up to what we need. We've got some figures that are flying out there for $2.5 million, something of this nature. But I'm not certain that all of those figures are correct. So I think it would be worthwhile to, if it was up to me, I think I would probably say, why don't we put it on the back burner for 6 months and appoint a commission with a person from each of the council people to be on this commission, and come to us in 6 months and say, okay, these are the things that have to be done to bring it into compliance as we need it. And 6 months I don't think is going to hurt us to delay this, because we're looking at a facility that's pretty inviting as far as I'm concerned. So I would like just to have some more information as to what we've got to do with it. And I still would like to know, in the future, we still don't know what the price is going to come out as between the jostling that we do to get a price. So that's where I'm at. I'm really confused with it. It's like a person that's going down the street and he sees this big, nice house, and boy, it is great. And so he gets into it, and lo and behold, he doesn't have enough money to put any furniture in there. So he's sitting on the floor in the corner with his only TV. And I've known people that have done that. They've gotten themselves into that situation where sometimes they get in a little too deep, and you've got to know exactly how much you're going to have to get all the amenities inside of a facility once you do get it. So that's kind of where I stand. I'm really kind of thrown back about this. I like the facility, and I know that the monies that we've set aside for this is $6 million. I don't think that's going to cover by the time we get in our bids as to what, you know, the whole facility will cost us. It might cost us $8 million. So that's where we're at.
Further discussion?
Yes, I have a comment.
You've already talked once.
Okay.
Deb?
Well, I would say I think it's a little premature to throw this out. This is an option that's been put on the table. We are in the process of have a study session this evening, the intention of which is to begin the vetting out of the cost. We don't know what the cost is going to be to fit the facility for the police needs. We don't know where we will end up on a final price on the building with the seller. That's we've gone back and forth once, and certainly in real estate, it's not atypical to go back and forth a couple more times. This is a market where we really, I think, have an advantage based on the economics to be looking at purchasing something. I think it's a viable option. I think it's innovative. It's interesting. It's big. It's off the campus. It's different. It's something we haven't looked at before, and I don't think that all of those reasons are reasons not to look at it now. And I think we owe ourselves the opportunity to do some vetting out on this and due diligence on this process. I think we owe it to the police. I think we owe it to the citizens. We've been sitting around on this police issue now for well over a year. We talked about it at our workshop over a year ago. We talked about it again this year. And
it's going to be a process to get it done, but we've got two options that are laying there. One that we have decided to move ahead with. Let's find out what it is going to cost and make our decision about whether we want to continue based on that. Without knowing that information, it is not, in my opinion, fair to discard this option. It's very viable.
Peggy?
I agree with Debbie, but I also have a question. It seems to me we are discussing our study session item. Are we indeed discussing our study session item right now?
We are discussing the motion that's in front of us.
But that looks to me like what is identified as study session. So if this motion were to pass, would we not then have a study session?
Well, if this motion were to pass, the council could decide to continue with the study session, but there wouldn't be much point with it.
If this motion passes, it kills the mineral building, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so I would, since I may not have another opportunity tonight, like to say I do not feel that we have enough information about almost anything. I thought at one of our meetings last week, last Monday, one of the interview meetings, we had agreed that we were going to have a session, study session, scoping out issues related not just to the mineral building, but the larger issue of the police facilities, that we were going to do some scoping with that and give direction. It would appear to me that what we agreed to is not going to happen. I'm going to oppose this motion because I think we need more discussion, more information, and I would myself like to put another facility that I understand is now available that's closer and might meet our needs just as well or better, but we're apparently not going to have opportunity to do that.
Jim?
It's interesting that we're getting people now talking about the very thing that I made a motion for a couple of weeks ago, which is to do a thorough analysis of both of our options in order to find out exactly what it's going to cost, whether we do it in mineral or whether we do it here. And you look at all the options that are available. That got turned down, and now we're back to discussing the very thing that we turned down before. I just think that we need to eliminate that West Mineral property, because I think that putting it over there is not going to be a good idea. We don't have the money to finish it up anyway.
Well, when we were doing the workshop in January, we were presented an alternative, which was a building at $3.2 million, and we had an estimate from Scott that was an estimate on what it would take to move the equivalent functions from the police department that we were considering for one of the other options, option 4, the Shenango, into the Mineral Avenue building, which Scott's estimate was $2 to $2.5 million. If the building was available at 3.2, and Scott's estimate is accurate, then we would be at our top limit that the council voted on. The 3.2 has been turned down, and a counteroffer has come back that's not quite twice that. Unless the counteroffer and Scott's estimate both are wrong, there's no possible way this building can happen, and even if this building happens, you still have a 67,000 square foot building that you're housing a police department in. Part of the problem that we have here is the issue that we should be discussing is not simply can we fit the Mineral Avenue building within our budget, but it should be what's the most cost-effective way to solve this issue with the taxpayers' dollars. And what we are comparing is a 67,000 square foot building where a subset of that is going to be used for the police department to a 14,000 square foot alternative that's on the east side of the building. If we go down the Mineral Avenue path, then we will not have done a comparison between what a comparable size building to contain the police would cost. We would not know whether we're spending excess money. The Mineral Avenue building was presented as a solution to all the space needs of the city, not simply for the police department. which is not what we started to do in the workshop. And frankly, going down that path is going to delay even longer getting something done for the police. So the question that we should be looking at is not simply, can we squeeze the Mineral Avenue building into the $6 million? And from the information that we have in front of us, the answer is no. The question should be, what's the real space needs of the police department? And from the memo that Jim put out, we're going to be looking at something that's about 50,000 square feet. And once again, 50,000 square feet is larger than the entire city center is right now. We have over 200 employees in this building. It's not possible to be cost effective to take a department that has 96 employees and put it in a larger building than what we're using currently to house more than 200 employees. But part of the problem is when you buy a 67,000 square foot building, you expand to fill up the space. And what we should be doing is looking at how much space does it take to solve the police space needs, and then what's available to do that and what's the most cost-effective way to do it. And this is not that solution. Further discussion?
I think it is the solution, and I think we should get, Scott's estimate was a guesstimate. I'd like to bring that up to date on how much it would cost. And I'd like to know what it costs to move this whole city over there and sell this property, what we'd get for this property before we eliminate mineral. We just can't eliminate mineral. The taxpayers and the citizens out there are going to wonder what we're trying to pull.
John.
Yeah, several years ago, many years ago, the city filed a lawsuit against the county for moving the courts out of downtown because of the negative impact it would have on the downtown merchants. So now we are talking about taking the 200 employees here and moving them out of town.
Out of town?
Moving them out of downtown. Do you know what a devastating effect that would have on downtown merchants?
No, I don't see it where it would have any effect on downtown merchants.
They won't walk across the street to have lunch someplace.
Well, maybe it'll help the mineral restaurants out there.
You know, I think that's a whole another question for studying is, do we want to go that direction?
I do.
Well, do 4 people on council want to consider moving all of the city functions from this location to Mineral Avenue?
That is what we said.
Hang on, guys. The motion that we have in front of us is to drop the Mineral Avenue building for consideration. Further discussion? Council ready to vote? A yes vote drops the Mineral Avenue building off. A no vote leaves it in consideration. Is that everybody?
The vote is 3 in favor with Councilwoman Cole, Councilman Mulvey, Councilwoman Brinkman, and Councilman Trujillo voting no. The motion fails.
Okay. That takes us to the MIA appraisal. Is there anything else we want to discuss about that?
What appraisal is that?
Well, this is Councilwoman Cole's item.
I don't see there's an item if we've just dropped that off the charts.
No, it's still live.
The motion failed.
Motion failed. I'm sorry. Well, no, I don't want to get an appraisal on that until we have discussion. I tried to say that I wanted to have larger discussion of the issue. So.
Okay. Then that takes us to reports. Mr. City Manager.
Yes, Council, I wanted to tell you that the economic summit that we talked about with the school district, the South Suburban Parks and Rec Board, ACC, has been confirmed. That will be on March 13th. And the school district will be the host for that. We'll be in the boardroom at the administrative headquarters on Crocker, 9 a.m. to noon. And I believe Scott Murphy, who's been leading that, the city's confirmed, ACC, South Suburban Parks and Rec, and I think he's also invited Centennial. We have confirmed Tom Clark with the the Denver Metro Chamber, and believe it was, you wanted to, there was a talk he had given to the Metro mayors. When we called his office, I said, well, that sounded like the one you had been referencing, sort of a big overview of state revenues. He will be confirmed. He's a confirmed speaker, so he'll be there and be part of the program.
Yeah, and I was specifically interested in the parts where he was talking about the sequence of tax increases and decreases that have happened at the state level.
Well, he's confirmed. I confirmed the date, and I can just confirm with him some of the topics. So that is confirmed for that date, 9 to noon. As a companion to that, we had tentatively on your council outreach scheduled a breakfast with the school district for, I think it was March, later in the month. But what I'm going to suggest to you is that we not hold it that day because it would be redundant. So whatever that date was for the March breakfast meeting, I think we're to cancel it.
The 19th?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Cancel that?
That's my suggestion to you, because I talked to Scott Murphy, and it seems to us it would just be redundant since we'll probably cover a lot of the same issues at the summit on the 13th.
Jim, somebody requested that Bob Patterson from the county be at this meeting too, I think. Didn't somebody request that? Bob Patterson from the county?
We can certainly invite Bob, sure. And that's all I have.
City Attorney.
I don't have anything.
Jose.
I'm okay. Thank you.
Deb.
No report.
John.
No report.
Tom.
Yeah, I've been reading about in this economy how people are saving money and cutting back on their budgets, and I noticed our Bemis Library is up, and last night Tim told us about the Littleton Museum, so I'll read that. The monthly visitation in February was 5,577, up from 3,860 in 2008, and for the year total attendance is 10,598, up 41% from in the first 2 months. So that shows people are out there saving money. In fact, I hear they're all going to the Ellis Theater anymore for Elvis Theater. It costs $3 out there to go to movies, and that makes sense. So we need to economize too.
Jim?
Yeah, first of all, I want to wish everybody a happy Square Root Day. Square Root Day is the day that the month and the day is the square root of the year. 030309. The next one's going to be 0404 in 2016. And there's only like, I think, 8 of them that occur every century. So this is Happy Square Root Day.
Only spoken by an ex-school teacher.
Livable Communities Committee met, and we met with the 50-plus Housing Council and the Accessory Dwelling Units group. We're having very good discussions about housing for seniors as well as housing for walkable type communities. So those are ongoing. We're sort of looking at increasing our committee by adding some more committee members, particularly from the environmental community, in with our meetings. April 2nd at the Colorado Convention Center, the Livable Communities, as well as other groups, is doing a universal design program, which ULI is involved in it. Dr. Cogg's one of the sponsors. It should be an interesting session. I think it's like 9 to 12, something like that. And on March the 19th, there's going to be a tour of select senior housing that occur in the South Metro region. They've got it lined up for 3 or 4 senior housing facilities. The Libby Bort's Assisted Living Board met, and at the time we were meeting, they were having a norovirus epidemic, and the building was quarantined, so we couldn't meet. We normally meet at the building, but we had to meet elsewhere because of that. And I haven't checked in the last few days whether it's still under quarantine or not. The Colorado Municipal League had a day-long legislative workshop downtown at the Westin. It was primarily dealing with transportation issues, with urban renewal legislation, and federal issues. That was followed the following day by the Municipal League Policy Committee, where we took positions on all the legislations that's affecting cities and towns in the state. And the last thing is a request for Wendy, if it's possible. We got tonight when we arrived 3 new corrected ordinances, one of which, when Doug remembered to pass it out, had all the strikeouts in it. But it would be most helpful when we get that if you could just strike out the word and retype the new word in there so that we can find that more quickly without us having to go through paragraph by paragraph to see what was changed. Even if it's just making a plural to a singular or vice versa, it helps us find that more quickly than having to search through to find it, if that's possible to do. And that's all.
Thank you.
Okay, first I want to congratulate Councilman Taylor for his recent election to serve as Secretary of Dr. Cobb. So keep him busier than he is even now. Second, I want to thank everyone who helped with and attended both of the True Grit Historical Preservation Forums. I believe the intent is to have a third one addressing some significant questions that people have about historical preservation, specific kinds of issues, but no date, I think, has been set for that yet. Third, library attendance is going gangbusters too, and tomorrow night the library board is going to host the provide dinner for the library staff, so that's probably the best board to be on, because you get free dinner you get to provide dinner for all these wonderful staff people. So it's a good job to have and a good board to be on both. Then I have a request about council calendar. Every now and again things don't show up on our calendars, and I should have seen it, but I missed at the top of our agenda for tonight the reception in there. And Marlene sent a little reminder today reminding us of the reception for the honorees tonight, but it wasn't on our council calendar, and I use that religiously, checking my own personal calendar, so I hope, well...
Dr. Cole, what I can tell you is we are making an absolute maximum effort to have people review that calendar. We're doing the best we can. We just have so many events, so many things.
I know you do.
I appreciate it, and every week I try to remind the department heads, please, please, please look at that. And so we will just continue to try.
It's just a little reminder, because
yes,
I know you guys do really well, and it just helps, with that. So, but I did appreciate Marlene today sending that. So,
yeah, and sometimes people don't look right at the top of the agenda too. So I've had that in the past. So that's why I asked her to.
I know you just look. I know it was my fault because it was there, but I was going from the calendar that we got, and I think that's all I needed to say. But I just want to thank all the citizens that we have who are stepping up to help people in need right now. I think we have people helping all the time, but I think even more people are stepping up to help, and I think we just need to keep doing that.
Okay, I suggest we take a 10-minute break, come back here at 9:20. Oh, I'm sorry, Tom had something. I'm sorry.
It's that time of the year, and the museum also told us last night that 9 lambs were born on the 1860s farm during February, and 3 more so far in March. So I hope the staff can protect them from the coyotes and the raccoons that are moving over there. But those thousands of people out there in Channel 8 should know about those lambs. Thank you.
I do have a Dr. Cog report.
Okay, Dr. Cog report.
At the meeting in February, we accepted the first part of the Urban Growth Boundary/Area Committee's report. The final vote's going to be when we adopt our final plan, which is probably going to be in August. The planners are going to be asked to come forward and produce more work before it comes back to the committee again. We determined the selection criteria for the stimulus package dealing with transportation. And tomorrow night, we will be having a public hearing on all of that, and then we'll vote at the end of the meeting tomorrow night about what projects will be moving forward for the stimulus package for not only the funds that Dr. Codd controls, but also the funds that CDOT, the projects that CDOT is bringing forth, as well as RTD. And it's all as part of a public hearing. If anybody would like to come sit in the audience, it'll last till midnight. We made a determination on the Cherry Creek water quality standards. We approved part of the staff recommendation and turned down part of the staff recommendation having to do with the phosphorus loads that's coming out of Parker. And this was a very split vote to deal with the phosphorus as well as the water quality standards for the reservoir. We had our two-day board retreat in this last Friday and Saturday, and we set our goals and priorities for 2009. And we decided that we've got so much on our work schedule right now that we're going to start having more frequent study sessions. So it'll be 2 meetings a month. We'll be starting, I guess, next month. That's it.
Mr. Mayor, I forgot a very important announcement.
Okay.
The Littleton 2009 calendar and annual report have been selected for a 2009 Blue Pencil and Gold Screen Award by the National Association of Government Communicators. I think we should be really proud. We like it, but it's nice to have it recognized otherwise. And the Littleton map and the community guide are also winning awards. We just don't know whether they're first or second place or an award of excellence. And we'll find that out when the awards are made later this year. But anyway, congratulations to everybody who's responsible for that. I hope I got all that right, Kelly. So, thank you.
Okay, now I suggest we take a 10-minute break, which means we come back at 9:25. Jim.
Council, let me just make a couple of introductions. First, I think most of you know Scott Brown with ARC from Boulder. Scott's worked with us for a number of years, even going back to the what we call the McLaren R&L proposal. Chris Sibilia, I don't know if some of you have had a chance to meet Chris. Chris is with Intergroup Architects, right up the street here at, I believe, 2000 West Littleton Boulevard. Some of you probably don't know, but Chris was actually the architect. The city helped put together funding for the infant and toddler addition to the village school, and Chris was our architect on that. But we've used Chris and Ned White with Intergroup actually helped us with one iteration of some campus planning that we've done before. So those are two technical people here to help us tonight. Let me just kind of set out, since the council, also, well, let me just point out that Chief Coogan and her command staff are here, so and other city council people. I thought we'd start with kind of what some of the assumptions are tonight, since the council's already had a little bit of a discussion about what we're up to. And we heard our homework assignment as it was given to us, or at least I tried to articulate in the memo that I sent out to you, was to try to get more clarity, a more sense of scope as to what you want us to do in vetting and doing due diligence on this building. So what we'd like to get some direction from you tonight is what depth of detail, what the scope of the cost estimates are supposed to cover, and what the assumptions are in terms of the operations. Is it going to be the entire police department? Is it going to be the entire police department over a certain period of time? Are we supposed to make any assumptions about the remaining portions of the building? We've heard ideas about moving the entire city down there, perhaps selling this building, renting space out. So to get some degree of accuracy, and what Scott and Chris will tell you is the more specific you can be about what the scope of the project is, the better job they can do in coming back to you with some cost estimates. The more conceptual things stay, the bigger the contingency, the bigger the unknowns are in terms of the cost estimates. And then if we get some direction from council, the idea would be to go drill down, do that technical work, do those cost estimates, and bring that back to you. And then that's the next gate to say, is this still within the realm of our expectations about what we thought we were trying to accomplish and what our potential financial commitments are going to be. Does that sound like a reasonable starting point to go forward on?
That we might need a vote on what we want to start on, because I'd like to have us identify the needs that we want or need to address, whether it's this building or the alternate proposal here or something else or whatever. Is everything that's kind of on the chart what we really want to accommodate at this point, whatever? And I'd also like us to identify what questions, which is a little bit different kind of issue. I'm not sure that some of the questions involve our experts here, but maybe need somebody else. I mean, I'm not sure who can answer, who's supposed to answer, or is able to answer some of them.
Okay, that's a good question. I mean, Dr. Cole, because if you go, I'll go back to my memo and the homework assignment that the staff was given, and coming out of the workshop, where the workshop, and this goes back to a couple of years before, when we were, or I guess actually, as I think maybe Debbie mentioned, the 2007 workshop, where we talked about basically the evidence storage, the crime lab, and then the invest space. In fact, I think Chief Coogan talked to you about at the workshop when she talked about the 3 T's, and we talked about that. And then we sort of had a split, so 2 parallel things going. We were, you, the 7 of you, were waiting on the court process so that you had some clear legal guidelines on the disposition of the water fund. The other piece of that then was that in working with Scott, we came back with those alternatives that then you saw at your 09 workshop. Councilwoman Brinkman then introduced what I think she termed the comprehensive solution, a much broader concept. Now, in the memo that I sent out, I said that in talking with these people, we had taken as a baseline the floor plans, which we have up here, that Councilwoman Brinkman presented at the workshop, which to some degree kind of schematically laid out floor space down at the Mineral Center. If you're wanting to have a discussion of broader overall needs of the police department and have Chief Coogan address those, or is the homework assignment for tonight to talk about the roughly 45 to 50,000 square feet that was presented at the workshop in January.
Jim, if I could.
Sure.
One of the reasons why I was hoping we could keep this session focused on the mineral space need or space plan is because it's very different than the other option, in that in the other options you're building from scratch. In this option you're not. You don't need to build investigators' offices. We have them. You don't need to do two-story special shelving for the store or the evidence storage, because you have a space where you can put different type of shelving in there, a lot less expensive shelving. So the building does not have the same principles as a new construction does. So this actually, while the needs are the same in terms of the broader scope of the police needs, the application on both of the buildings will vary. So in order to get what I hope to be, what I'd like to see come out of this tonight is for us to have the input from the police. We've got the professionals here. We've got council. Let's overlay police needs with this and then have them come back and say, this is what it will cost. We don't know what it will cost. And we can't make a decision, I can't make a decision about whether I can spend any money at all until I know exactly what I'm buying. And so that's the intention tonight, is to be able to give clear enough direction that the professionals can go back and apply exactly what's needed to move the entire police facility over to mineral.
Part of what I was trying to get at is, for example, in the Kalia report and what Chief Coogan has talked to us about otherwise, was to have a training facility that we could train not only our folks in, but also train other folks. And I don't know that council ever said, yes, we want to have that scope of training. If we don't have that scope of training, then we don't maybe need so much training room. If we don't need so much training room, maybe some stuff on the second floor gets put on the first floor or whatever. But there's some things that it seems to me we haven't really come to some agreement on. And whether or not training might grow in the future and then you would have more, I don't know. The other kinds of issues that I'm concerned about with that building are what some people call the life cycles of various components of the building. The roof, for example, which is the original roof, and has experienced some leaks for sure, because I saw signs of one, perhaps minor one, down above one of the posts, and then much more major one in a room that I stumbled into, whose door was closed Saturday, but I stumbled in. How much longer does that roof have to live? And when it has to have something major done with it, what kind of expense is that? How much does it cost to heat and cool that building? It's all on electricity. And how much might we be expecting for costs of the lighting? There's an awful lot of lighting in that building. It has to be, because it's a big building. But, I know people who have businesses that they bought that were bigger than they could afford, and certainly people who have houses they bought and then they couldn't afford, to really live in them, or they could only live in one room because they couldn't afford to live in the rest of the house. So I want to, have a handle on that, because we potentially, I don't know, because as you said, can bid, counter bid. Well, then you can counter and counter, and so you can have a couple of iterations more. But I don't know even if we got it in our affordable piece. Could we, particularly in the economy that some people are saying may not really get healthy again for 10 years. Can we afford that building? And despite, John, what you said, I think you said, when we were discussing the building during the regular meeting, I'm not wanting to move this whole facility over there. I'm not wanting to abandon downtown Littleton with a big piece of city staff. But in voting against that other motion, it's in part because I wanted us to have dialogue about some questions that I don't think we've had adequate dialogue, that then our experts here can help us with in understanding more our short-term and long-term.
Let me throw out a couple of technical terms and see then if we can get some consensus so we can use your time productively. And I'll get Chris and Scott involved here at the mic. Let me first off say that one of the things to do what I would call due diligence of this building would be to have an inspection and assessment of all those major building components. So think about that in terms of what we would call due diligence. And I don't know that if you saw the standard real estate contract that Suzanne had written up, but that's a very standard practice of due diligence, and that's where you have somebody go in, examine all those major components. You also look at any kind of zoning. You get with the building, the zoning department. What was the zoning? Can you have, can you do this? Can you do that? And you do really an assessment. Chris, you want to talk a little bit more? Just give the council a little bit more in depth about the due diligence piece of that and how it would address Dr. Cole's concerns about, how old is that roof? What might be a typical life cycle? How do you look at the heating, air conditioning, electrical systems, the records of when were they upgraded, or all those kinds of things. Maybe, and speak into the mic so they'll pick you up.
A few years back, we did a similar exercise for the Arapahoe County Community Services Building when you guys were looking to try to evaluate potential uses for that. And this booklet is kind of an example of the due diligence study that was done for that. And basically what we do is we hire potentially a civil engineer to review all the site and utility issues. We hire a mechanical, electrical, and plumbing engineer to review all of those building components. We would hire a roofing consultant to evaluate the condition of the roof and recommendations in regards to how it would need to be repaired or replaced, or what the estimated time frame for it would be before it would need to be replaced. Potentially we'd hire a ADA consultant to do a full ADA study of the property and identify any deficiencies. Occasionally we hire a asbestos.
ADA is American Disability Act.
Asbestos investigation company to go in and take samples. I think based on the age of this building, I wouldn't expect that it would have any asbestos concerns in it, but it still may be prudent for the small cost of that additional investigation to go ahead and do that. And then we assemble a report basically based on the investigations that each one of the consultants does, and assemble it in a organized format here. And basically this is what we did for the previous building, and then we additionally did more of an executive summary 2-page document for Jim that was a little bit more digestible that he could distribute to staff to review and kind of hit the highlights of the major issues. And those reports, we're not always able to estimate costs for some of those deficiencies that are identified, but we can at least give that information to someone who can estimate those costs. In many cases, we're able to take a rough stab at it just as part of the due diligence review.
And how long does that take, and how much does that cost to do all that?
We're estimating, it varies a lot just depending on how quickly we can track down some of the existing information on the building. It can take us, 2 weeks just to track down real basic information on the building, and then we need another 2 to 3 weeks to do our investigation and a week to put the report together. So we're guessing 30 to 45 days from when we get authorized to proceed. And the cost of it would be a real rough guess right now because I literally have to go solicit proposals from all the various consultants that I just mentioned, but we're guessing somewhere in the $15,000 to $20,000 range.
So that's the due diligence piece of it, and Dr. Cole, that kind of gets at your first issue about just those life cycles, building components, how old are they, what's the likelihood that they're going to have to be replaced, upgraded, those kinds of things. The second piece then to frame it is when you kind of talked about needs, and you mentioned specifically the training room, and I guess that's then where we need some further direction from the council, or if you want to have Chief Coogan respond to this. But if you want to go through, these are the what I'll call rough floor plan layouts that Councilwoman Brinkman presented to you at the workshop. So we've taken this at a baseline, and if you wanted to talk about each of these areas, obviously the training room is shown up there. If you want to talk about each of these functional areas, then I think Chief Coogan is prepared to talk about what's the functionality, what's the what's the need of that particular function. Now, obviously, about again roughly say 15 to 17,000 square feet of this matches up as best as Scott could say when at the workshop you were trying to get apples to apples with the other comparisons, and we had costed done estimates of those for the add-on here and then what we'll call the Shenango warehouse, and that's where the $2 to $2.5 million. Beyond that, then I think gets more to Councilwoman Brinkman's comprehensive solution in terms of how the rest of that space would be programmed. But if you've got specific, but that's the kind of thing we would need direction on as to do you want the architects and the cost consultants to take basically this as a starting point, this roughly 34,000 square feet, which is all the first floor, plus adding on the holding cells, vehicle exam, Sally Court, and then this is about 12, I'm just eyeballing this, but 10 to 12,000 square feet on the second floor. Are there some other variations? But that again was, I'm saying we need to have some basic concrete assumptions about what your expectations are before we start spending money with these gentlemen and they start putting together cost estimates and drawing stuff.
My starting point was just to find out how much it cost to buy the building and how much it cost to move over there and get settled. And then how much would it cost to add on here and move everything into this one. That's really what I was looking for, not getting into architects yet or anything, or the expense of architects. I just want to know what it costs.
It just costs to buy the building and just
move everything, move the
back
police
up
department over there.
A moving van and just move everybody down there?
The police department.
Yeah.
And the same cost for building out here and moving the police department out to the new building. How much does that cost? So we compare apples to apples.
All right.
And I don't really want to get into that. I wasn't planning on getting in any of this until we knew what, if we're going to spend $8 million over there, we might as well forget it and just go with what's out here and not get into all that.
Well, that's helpful feedback, Tom, because that's exactly the clarification that we're trying to get here tonight. If you, what is that level of cost? What this is shown is moving the entire police department down to Mineral.
But I don't have the cost of that.
No, and we won't know the cost of that unless we ask these gentlemen to sit down and cost it out with all of the equipment, all of the modifications that will have to be done down there to accommodate everything that's shown on these floor plans.
You'd have a cost to moving the police department out into the new building too, wouldn't you?
Yes, sir. Well, it's not apples to apples because the moving it out into a new building, when we talked about it at the workshop, we had talked about only about 14 to 17,000 square feet.
Yeah.
This is talking about somewhere roughly in the 45 to 50,000, because what you're doing is adding spaces like patrol. You're adding some lockers and showers on the upper floors. You're adding fire dispatch.
Jim, would it be more efficient for us to overlay for example, the patrol, by moving patrol down there? There needs to be some refinements to the building in order to accommodate patrol. Ask the police, what are those things that need to be done? And then that gives the architects or, the designers the information to be able to price that out. Because we can't unfortunately just pack up a bunch of desks and move them down there.
Right.
There are some things we have to do within the building. Now, there's some things, from my understanding, and that can be phased in. There are a lot of things that don't have to happen immediately. And so, even a phased approach on the pricing too. But, for example, the lockers and stuff. What do we need? What's in that building? What has to be done to get the police in there? If, we need, those are the prices that we need to have. And then, the floor plan that's laid out here, that isn't anything, I don't think that's cut in stone at all. I think that the architects, once they have an idea of what the space needs are, what the different functional needs are, then things can move around as needed, as appropriate.
And that's kind of the level of detail, for whatever you wanted to accomplish tonight. And you can get down into kind of giving them direction. Let me just take the locker room area. Then the chief can probably say, I need 70 lockers or whatever the number is. Then do you want to have, is the lockers and the showers going to have a certain layout? Then do you want to ask these guys on the first floor or on the second floor, we want you to design 70 lockers. They have to be big enough. The specifications have to be big enough to accommodate all of the gear.
Well, I don't know how we decide to do this if we don't know what that's going to cost. We would need to have the same cost evaluation on a building you're adding on. If we're going to move,
right.
If we're going to move the storage or, anything that we're going to do, we need to know if we're going to make these decisions, what's that cost?
Right.
So I think we need to vet that out. Now, whether this is, if going into that deep of detail is not something that this is appropriate place for, but council kind of needs to give you direction to move ahead to know exactly what we expect in terms of the price. Because if you were to come back and say, well, here's what we looked at and it's going to cost $4 million, or here's what we looked at and it's going to cost, $1 million.
Mm-hmm.
I think we need to agree on what we want it to be, what we want the pricing to be based on. I
agree. So let me talk a little bit and maybe get Chris or Scott, either one, involved a little bit more. Let's talk about those different levels of design.
Well, can I stop here because I'm confused now because I thought that we were evaluating the Mineral building as a building to move the entire police department in. So has that changed? Okay, so it looks like the first decision is we are moving the entire police department out of this building into the mineral building. Just, are there objections to that? Is that what the goal is?
That's what we're talking about.
Okay. So.
Okay. Now
that's not happening in phases. That's happening at a one-time move.
Okay, that's the question about the phasing then, if that's.
Phasing is not phasing of moving the police over. The phasing is an improvement in a room. So, for example, you have the training room. Well, wouldn't it be nice to have 3 plasma TVs for, visuals in the training room? Well, yes, but should that be considered part of phase 1? No. Those types of things.
Okay.
I mean, don't.
Let me get a couple of, let's respond to this then. Let me take this basic assumption that Doug just laid out there, that, and this is for your vetting process. Assumption 1 is that the entire police department is moving into that building, okay?
I don't know that we're unanimous on that.
Okay, well.
Let's make a motion.
Sure.
Okay. Want to make a motion to move the entire police department in there?
Make a motion that to vet out the pricing, to move the entire police department from the city center, the city service center, and all other miscellaneous locations to mineral building.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved to move the entire police department out of the city center, the city service center, and wherever else they may be, into the 1101 West Mineral Avenue building.
Question on that? Is that meaning all in one shot, like not phased in over a few years or something?
Well, so far, that we'll have to handle that as a second motion. Move the entire police out of wherever they are into mineral building.
Dr. Cole, this is a scoping issue. We can come back and talk about phasing. But if you want us to start with a scoping issue, to start the basics, if you say, I'm for this, but I may want to phase this, but the baseline is it's all moving, and that's where we would start with the space planning.
Okay.
Doesn't matter when if you say we're going to push something back or we're going to alter it.
Discussion on the motion.
Isn't this what staff came up with, the option of moving over by Lowe's? Wasn't that including moving all the police department into Lowe's? Or
No, sir.
What was it?
No, that was the 3 components. That was the crime lab, the evidence storage, and the investigations division only.
Only?
Yes, sir.
Did we have a plan for the rest of the building?
The rest of the building was going to have to just come incrementally at some later date. There was some backfilling. I'll just give you an example. If we were going to move investigations, the space that they were in would be available for administrative space, and we could expand the locker area. But for patrol and to the motorcycle and the traffic unit now is down at the service center, they would have stayed where they were.
Okay.
Jim?
Even though I am adamantly opposed to moving the police department over there, I'm going to support this motion because I think the only way we're going to reach a decision is we're going to have a very thorough comparison of what it's going to cost to buy that building and remodel it. And we have to have a very thorough analysis of what it would take to add on to this building according to the options that we gave at the workshop. And until we get that information from both buildings, we cannot, in my opinion, make a very informed decision about which is the best for this city to move in. We got to have all of that. And I've said that before, and I'll repeat it again.
Further discussion?
Yes, so I have a question. So does moving everything over there include building the holding cells and the exam bay and so forth.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I mean, because moving in my head is different from building, so.
The way the
Okay.
motion got suggested was the entire police operation. Now, some things aren't shown here right now. For example, the traffic unit, I don't believe is shown on this floor plan.
Okay, and can
But certainly,
Traffic would move over.
sorry.
Traffic would move over.
Okay, I guess I didn't see them called out here, but
So can I
certainly.
hear the motion again, because I'm not sure that it's saying all that, but go ahead.
Motion is to move the entire police department out of whatever buildings and locations they are into the Mineral Avenue building.
Okay, that is not what you just were asking for, I think.
You want to correct it? Please do.
Use the microphone, please.
I have Councilman Brinkman, or Councilmember Brinkman saying to vet out the pricing to move out the entire police department to the Mineral building.
I'm sorry, you are more accurate than I am.
Okay, so all of this is getting information, it's not making decisions. That's the part that I was.
This is the baseline
okay.
for the cost, the pricing, excuse me.
Further discussion?
When you talk about moving everything out of the service center, does that include vehicle compound, everything else?
Nobody had talked to me about the vehicles, but that's a good question.
Evidence, vehicles and evidence, where you're going to store them at this location?
Mobile command unit.
Chief, you want to come up to the mic?
That option would clearly be up to council. What we looked at was leaving the Quonset hut, taking out the traffic units, the tricycles, some of the storage there, and using the Quonset hut for vehicle storage as a possibility, because we have no vehicle storage for vehicle evidence storage. But it would be moving everything else except for vehicle storage to the other location. The command van and the SWAT van would have to stay in the Quonset hut.
Thank you.
And so each time, excuse me, Chief, but so each time that a detective needs to go look at a car as part of the evidence being held, they will have to leave this facility, or whatever facility it is, to go do that. Is that correct?
Yes. And we have 2 storage bays there now that we use. And then if we have more, which sometimes we do, we have to pay a towing company to store it for us because we have no place to put it currently.
Thank you.
Probably, Chief, while you're here, the other clarification is in this, again, I was just working off of the floor plans, the fueling operation. Was there any talk about eventually having, because all of the mechanics and maintenance and the fueling is all done still at this service center? Was there an assumption that that would stay at the service center? Okay. Because I wanted to, since you mentioned that, and it was all police operations, it sounds to me like it might be 90%, because that's why I would add, that's a good question, Jim, because I would assume that our fueling and mechanic operations that does all the maintenance and repairs would remain over there on Bellevue.
Further discussion? Council ready to vote?
The vote is 7 in favor. That motion's approved.
Okay.
Okay.
Second question was phasing. Apparently we still are debating phasing. So let's get a motion that this is either done all at once or it's done in phases. Scope this out. Peggy,
I'm sorry.
you want to make a motion on whether this is done all at once or whether this is done in phases?
Before we do that, Doug, could we ask the chief about the practicality of that in terms of, you know, and then also if in terms of phases, what is the length of time between phases?
Chief, you want to come back down to the mic?
Sorry, could you clarify for me more what you're asking? I'm not real sure what you mean by phases.
By phases? For example, the holding cells, which Jim said we spent $400,000 to $500,000 to build just a couple of years ago. So are we thinking to build all that right away or wait a couple of years or so?
Well, I think that's council's decision. The holding cells here in this building cost $500,000. They're usable. We would continue to use them. That would be a decision for council. If you move all operations there, eventually you would assume that you would move that there too. That would be council's decision if you did that immediately, or the question is, do you do it now? Do you do it in 3 years? Do you do it in 5 years? Again, that's up to council. But we do have working holding cells. I believe previous discussions about the building and what needed to happen had to do with critical functions that had to happen and the amount of risk that was involved with that. And that's why those holding cells were built, because the risk of not having proper holding cells was so high.
Point of clarification on that. I got a quote from Doug Farman that the holding cells cost about $250,000.
Well, my source was Jim, so I don't know. Somebody must have some numbers.
Hey, Jim.
Let me just say that Commander Beckman and I'll have to track down where the 260, but by the time we paid the whole thing, all the design work, the total project cost, our recollection is it's somewhere in the $400,000 to $450,000 range. I can certainly backtrack and find out exactly the source of the number that Mr. Farman gave you.
Okay.
For the purposes of what we are discussing tonight, I don't think phasing should be considered. We're looking for the total cost to move the police into this building, whether it's done in 1 year or it's done in 10 years through some phasing project. We need to know what that cost is. That's the only way you can make a decision. You got to know what it's going to cost you. And you can't say we're going to do 50% of it this year and 50% next year or 25% next year. You got to know what it's going to cost you. So phasing, to me, is an inappropriate direction to go.
That's what I said at the first. All I want is the price of moving over there.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
And the price of moving out here. So I can compare.
Okay, but we still need to get a motion. So to speed things along, I move that the pricing is based on the all happening at once.
Second.
Discussion? Council ready to vote?
The vote is 7 in favor. The motion's approved.
Okay. Question I have is, how many people is this based on? I mean, we were specifically talking lockers. Are we talking 70 lockers, which covers the current sworn staff? Or are we talking the 119 lockers that the McLaren report was based on? What population are we basing this on?
Chief?
We currently have lockers for both all of the sworn and the civilian. I believe we'd be talking about 100 lockers for, right now we have 96 employees. I would think probably 110, right in that 105, 110 would be appropriate, because we need a certain amount of factor for the male-female ratio. So,
but the real question is what are we going to size the building for? You have 96 positions. How many positions are we sizing this building for? Because the reason we got into this is apparently the 14,000 square foot building is a temporary solution. So if we're comparing this as a longer term solution than the 14,000 square foot building, how many police officers and non-sworn officers and volunteers is that based on?
I would have to ask a professional about that. We have approximately 100 people right now. What we don't have is space for volunteers. I don't know what numbers we'll have in the future. I think as we're looking at the pricing, we're looking at where are we today for the cost. I would have to turn to a professional for that.
Well, I guess I don't understand why we would spend $3.2 million for building and then spend the money to rehab the building to create the same space that we have for the same number of people that we have right now. That's, I mean, the whole reason why we were approaching doing the evidence storage in the crime lab was to increase the space to take care of future processing needs and evidence storage. So if all we're looking at is to take the 96 employees of the police department and move them down to Mineral, aren't we spending a whole bunch of money to get the exact same thing that we have now?
I would disagree that we're getting the exact same thing that we have now, certainly. And I think that this is a building where there are offices already built in. There are walls, there are doors, there are windows. They are wired for all of the internet and phone and all of that equipment. There is, it's a building that obviously has been able to handle 20 years of, or oh gosh, I guess over 10 years of being full with Martin Marietta employees. Another couple years being full of U.S. West employees, where I don't know what the population in that building was, but of employees, but you know, if it's we move over 20 administrative, and then after a couple of years you need to hire a couple more, there's not going to need to be any renovation done. You might need to buy a desk or a file cabinet, but there's plenty of offices in this particular building to handle that type of growth, which I think is one of the advantages of this building, is that it accommodates adding, you know, any type of growth that may be needed. It's also very accommodating to that adjustability based on over the, you know, next 20 or 30 years, depending on what kind of growth has to take place. So,
well, but we were building the 14,000 square foot addition to handle future needs. This was presented as not a long-term need. I mean, we had the discussion with you, Chief, a year ago at the workshop about what your needs were, and you said most of the police were out on the street, that what you needed was evidence storage in the crime lab, and now we're at this building. So trying to figure out if we just move everybody over, and then a year from now we come back and say, no, we need to modify the building because we need to add more lockers, or we need a bigger training room, or we need another sally port, or we need more evidence storage. I mean, we have to have some basis of what it is that we're using to determine how many square feet we're going to allocate to each entity, especially if you're going to lease the remaining portion to somebody that's not in the police department. You have to have some kind of walls of separation. So you have to know how big the police department side is going to be and how big the other side, and that has to be based on some projection of employees. So,
well, I think it has to be the same projection you use on whatever you're going to do for the other option. So if you're looking at the other option, the 14,000 square foot, what number of employees are you looking at that too? Because that option considers the fact that you still have most of the administration still working out of this building. So if you're going to increase it by 10%, then you're also using up the space that you have in this building at 10%. Do you have that space? I mean, it's got to be apples to apples if you're going to do.
Let me talk a little bit about this apples to apples, and then again, what I think is sort of a critical policy point. for the council, and that's the 14,000 option that you saw around, well, from 8,500, which was the standalone, just evidence storage down at the service center. But I'll talk about the campus option that we looked at, which did assume some certain baselines. And that is that we did cost out the evidence storage, the crime lab, the invest, and then that also, if you recall what Scott had costed out, was when you move the crime lab and out of this building, we were going to expand the locker space down there. Now, I don't know how many lockers
Jim,
we currently have.
I was assuming 120 lockers. Does that sound right?
Scott just priced out 120 lockers, but how many do we have today? Does anybody know?
60.
Counting the ones in the hallway, we have about 105.
Okay, so you're somewhere in that range, but so the trying to get the apples to apples were these specific functional areas. I think the things that the 14,000 square foot option here does not address the patrol operations, it does not address the dispatch. So maybe we are to talk about what those things are that are more of the comprehensive solution, because that's the baseline. I mean, that's the important philosophical policy issue you need to make is this: do you want to cost out or price out, in some sense, a comprehensive, consolidated police operation? Now, whether it be, I always get nervous about just terms, because if we added 14,000 feet here, there obviously would be some freeing up of space over here. So whether or not you'd want to have a comparison of what you would get down at that building versus the 14,000, that's a different homework assignment than if we're just supposed to vet this building.
Can I ask a
Did
question?
that make sense to anybody except me? Thank you, Chris.
Yeah.
Chris understood what I said.
Question,
Yes,
how much space, total space now, does police and the two dispatch areas have, including the evidence storage and all? How much total space are we using?
We don't know that number. We'd have to go calculate it for you.
Okay, seems to me that would be helpful, but
Jim?
I think I've got to say that the other option we had for this campus was not 14,000 square feet. It was actually 16,000, because we added back in the motion that was made, the emergency planning center.
Yes, sir.
And,
I stand corrected.
And so it's actually a little over 16,000 square feet.
Actually, I had a number in my mind, 15,000. I'm teasing you.
I do have another question about the costs for doing this. I remember in the workshop, I believe that, Chief, you said something about some concerns about security for a building that's covered in glass, for safety and that sort of thing, and that some enhancements might need to be done for the security of that building. Is that still a concern, and is that something that we need to look at for adding to the cost of moving into that building?
We went down there and took a look at it again. I think the glass isn't a concern. There aren't any laws that govern that in terms, if we close the shades, there's glass in this building too. If we close the shades, then at night it doesn't illuminate through, because during the day you cannot see through those windows. So it would be those areas at night. What does come up in terms of security is that it would mean security on the doors and key fobs, a certain amount of lighting, those types of things would have security issues for us, other than the glass.
And the parking lot.
And the parking lot, yes. But not that we would fence the parking lot, except probably where the police cars are, because we have an open parking lot here that anyone can walk up to at any time.
If I could just make a comment on the glass, too. One of the pictures that you may have seen, it's all glass fronted. Half of that glass is decorative. It's not, inside the windows don't go floor to ceiling glass. The other thing that, when I was over there checking that out also, I noticed that the landscaping does serve quite a visual protection, and that's not the right word, but with the windows too. They've got some some older trees out there, a lot of the evergreen trees, and so you've got some good security there. You also have a large brick fence, wall all along Mineral, which is, when you're on the first floor, it is a complete protector from this traffic and the lights and any of that type of thing on Mineral. So when you take a more serious look at that, it's a pretty secure building. It was built by DOD. It's worked for FEMA and their security issues. So,
Well, I'd like to get back to the question of how many people we're building this for. In the McLaren report, it's based on 33 additional officers starting at a 99 base. So it's at 132 sworn and non-sworn employees in the police department, and they had 119 lockers. They had 95, which was 100% of the projected sworn officers at the 33% increase for males, and they had 24 lockers for females, which was 25% of the sworn. So, and they have specified what the size of the lockers are. If we're going to spec out how much space we need for lockers and storage and showers, we have to know how many lockers we're going to put in, and to know how many lockers we're going to put in, we have to know how many people we're sizing the building for. So we're getting back to, at least in my mind, are we simply moving over the existing 96 positions from the police department to Mineral Avenue, or are we sizing this so this is a long-term solution?
well, if I can just make a suggestion on that. The McLaren report numbers, I haven't looked at those, and I'm not figuring those into any of this plan, and I think that there's probably better numbers that we can have that are more actual, more real. I had Chris put together some numbers for me based on potential growth in terms of what do we have with existing zoning on undeveloped residential sites, that, those types of numbers. And you take that combined with the national average that you add a police officer for every 1,000 people, I think, is that the number, 2 officers for every 1,000? Is that in the national?
2 per 1,000 is the national number.
2 per 1,000. And we're under that, so, you can do any numbers you want to. I would be comfortable saying existing police numbers and plus 10%. That for growth.
How long will that handle us for?
Again, I don't know. That's something I have to sit down and talk to a professional. It depends on how many residents we're going to add in the city, what kinds of changes there's going to be in housing. It's not a number I'm prepared to give you right now of where I think we're going. Let me just clarify, though, not all 96 people work at this building, and all functions are not at this building. So,
yes, but we're moving all of those into the Mineral building.
Correct.
Well, wouldn't we have to know how many officers we're projecting to have in here and how long this building is going to be useful in order to know how to cost it out so that we're...
I think that's a good question, Mayor, and I think Again, it's sort of council policy. Councilwoman Brinkman has suggested a 10% factor, but that would really, if you, to go to perform the analysis that you're suggesting, would really kind of be going back to stage one and doing the needs analysis or some variation of the needs analysis that was done with the McLaren report. So again, Councilwoman Brinkman is comfortable, she says she's comfortable with a 10% growth factor, existing plus 10. If, and the other options that we brought to you, quite frankly, we had assumed we were addressing needs today, perhaps with the exception of evidence storage, which is a little hard to gauge.
Well, I don't know how we can take 15,000 square feet or whatever it is that we have now today and get to 45,000 square feet without knowing why we're making the change.
Well,
I mean, the evidence, we don't have a crime lab, or we don't have a functioning crime lab. So McLaren came in and, in theory, figured out how much square feet it would take for the different functions of the crime lab.
Yes,
so
sir.
we have some figure for the crime lab.
Yes, sir, and that's what Scott used.
So we know we need whatever that square footage is for the crime lab, which is what we set out to accomplish. So what are the other needs that we're addressing that aren't being addressed in the current city center, and at how many employees?
And that may be, again, if that's part of our homework assignment, because neither myself nor Scott or any of us were involved in laying out this particular plan. What I understood was that the command staff went down and kind of did these colored drawings. So what I do know is, what I'm comfortable with is the 14, 15, 16,000 square feet that Scott, and there is a direct tie there back to the McLaren study, because that's pretty much what he used from that. Beyond that, as to whether or not the, let's say here, the patrol operations, we've not looked at the analysis, we've not had any professional look at the analysis of that, as to that square footage, what number of officers that will support, and whether or not there's, if you're going to have a 10% growth factor of patrol.
Well, a 10% growth factor isn't that much. I look at the, we're looking at a number of dwelling units, 2,000, 2,500 dwelling units. And that's stuff that's zoned, that's not started development. That's other stuff that's zoned, that started development. I mean, I think the other thing is that you've got somewhere, I don't know, it'd be nice to have the exact square footage that the police occupy now. I've heard 19 to 17. So if we say the middle, 18,000 that they're currently using in the building, I think they've probably got about 4,000 over at the service center. You're talking about a 16,000 square foot addition. That's 38,000 square feet. Did I do that wrong?
If you've got 16
18,
now,
4,
and you add
16.
4, that's 20.
And then
Then she
the
added
addition.
the 14, the addition, the 14 here, that if you added.
No, the 16. Jim said 16.
I'm sorry, I need to
So
get that
if
number.
you say,
The 16
since
for
we,
what?
the new building, the addition that you would build. Because that's where this, if you're moving everybody over, you have to count the city center square footage.
Yeah, I'm tracking with, she took, if they're in 18,000 square feet now, I mean, roughly, that's
Yeah,
a guess.
that's split the
And maybe
difference.
4,000 square feet if you count the Quonset hut.
Well, not the Quonset, but the training.
Oh, okay, the training
patrol,
room,
yeah.
the motorcycle officers. And then the 16,000, that was part of one of the options here, which includes the crime lab and et cetera, et cetera. You get to about 38,000 square feet. So that's the sort of the baseline. Now, there's the other, has never been talked about, and is really sort of what I'll call new space here, is the dispatch centers. Okay, and that's another one. That's an existing space here, and that space has never been talked about. So we've never, not never, but I mean in this go-around, we've not done an analysis of the dispatch space, you know, what's actually going to be in there. And then there's a few
Police
others
and
like
fire.
the community, what I'll call, that's called out as community services, emergency planning, and I think the rest of it, well, volunteer services. So there's probably some other smaller spaces in here that would get us to kind of roughly the 45 to 48,000.
Well, but if you do that, the 14,000 square feet, or 15 or whatever it is.
16.
The one on that was crime lab, evidence storage, interview rooms?
Yes, sir. The whole investigations division.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So if that's the square footage we're going to use in the new building, then once again, we are moving all the existing people out into a new building and only providing the additional space that we were going to do at the city center already.
And that's, yes, you're.
So is that?
And is there then?
Because that's not including dispatch, which is
not
shown
including
on there.
dispatch, right?
So what is it that we're doing?
Can I ask, maybe we look at this a little differently? First, have we indeed set a $6 million limit? We did. I mean, are we still firm on the 3 to 6 million?
I don't know.
Is anybody changing their mind on that? Because if we're looking at the 6 million limit, we had this assertion that let's say the 3.2 million plus the moving over there is going to exceed that. So it seems to me if we're capping at 6 million, then we don't have to get quite down into all this detail right away, because I'm suspecting, although I don't know, that if we take the 3.2 and figure out just the cost of moving everything that we have over there and whatever other little pieces are connected with that, maybe we first need to see, do we exceed the 6 million just with that before we go into the kind of stress that we're getting into at this point? Because if we exceed that, it's like you say, I'm going to spend so much on vacation, and I start figuring up what it's going to cost, and then I get there and I say, geez, I really like to do that, but I didn't even finish costing it out, and I've already exceeded my cap. So I mean, that's part of what.
What I said at the very start, if we're up to 8 million, let's forget it. All I want is a price.
I mean, it would be in one sense, I mean, as an exercise, be nice to know how much all this would cost. But if we're going to way exceed or even exceed the cap we set, then, I mean, if that happens, then we need to be looking at something different. But we're discussing several other issues here instead of what is it we need to know to see if we can proceed with this.
Well, but unless you know what you're moving over and what you're moving it into, you don't know what to estimate for the costs.
Well,
So,
I know, but I mean, if it's already here and we're moving it, that's one thing. And if we exceed at that point, it doesn't matter how many others we're moving over. I mean, whether we might expand when we get there.
so do you want to make a motion that the costs be based on the existing 96 positions of the police in the new facility? All right, it's been moved that the costs be based on current staffing levels which is 96. Is there a second?
Now to
Second.
Okay.
Discussion, now to be fair, we got to know if in this 14,000, now 16,000 out here, was the cost of putting in 135 lockers and all this other thing you talked about a while ago, or else we're not apples to apples again. But all I want is the cost of the two buildings. And this one's gone up. We had a 5,109, 5,109,000. And now he said there's another 2,000 square feet on there with the Emergency Planning Center at $360 a square foot. So that price has gone up too.
Well, that came up at the workshop. I believe Scott said that it wouldn't be the same price as that. Did you not give us a price of about $600,000 to add the? Okay.
We do have those lockers that were built out in the existing facility, or in the existing building back there.
135 that we'd move out into the new building.
Right now, I assume that we were taking out the small lockers and putting in 120 of the bigger lockers. Could we squeeze in another 15 somewhere back there? I don't know.
Showers, the same deal that we have here out there.
That was like, that's 150,000 to renovate those locker areas.
John?
Just to address Peggy's last comment. I mean, number one, we aren't going to buy it for $3.2 million.
I
That
know,
was turned down.
yeah.
So let's assume we did. Okay. That leaves $2,800,000 to renovate it, to get it ready to move the whole police department over there. That works out, and we're talking 46,000 square feet. That works out to $60.86 a square foot, and neither one of these gentlemen will tell us we can redo that building for $60 a square foot.
Well, that's part of what I'm trying to get out here, that we haven't necessarily all tracked that. You got your little speedy calculator there, right? And I know we had that estimate, before. I mean, just the ballpark estimate. But that's what I'm trying to get us to see. If we are firm still on the $6 million, and we know we're not getting the building at 3.2, but if we're firm on the 6, what do we have to look at before we say, okay, let's look a little more, or hey, let's, no matter how much some people might want the building or not, it just isn't doable. I mean, that.
Well, and that's, and let me throw out some architectural terms here, and we talked about schematic design, but that was part of the assumptions, and in my memo, if you said, I suggested we would start as the base assumption, the floor plan that was presented. Now, and this pretty much, I think, I'll have to check on the 96 officers, but this is pretty much to accommodate the existing sworn and civilian force that we have today, plus, as we said, the dispatch center, and obviously that we could accommodate that. So if you want to start with that basic assumption, everybody moves in something roughly approximating this floor plan, then we could start with a schematic design and start to put some cost estimates together. Or Chris, why don't you kind of get in, talk a little bit about this in terms of how you would see that scope of work coming together.
I think you've been touching upon it back and forth, but basically to do it accurately, we need a program of the spatial requirements based on, what the spatial needs are, on whether that's based on staff or projected growth or whatever. And there's a couple different ways we could go about it. I mean, we could base it off of the McLaren study that was done previously with some minor adjustments, or we could do a totally new study. And try to work from that as a baseline, but try to update it to current standards. Typically, in every project we do, we're designing for a 3 or a 5 year future growth, because it's just not prudent to design for, your current day needs and not allow for any future growth. So to really do it accurately, we need to have a program of needs. And otherwise we're, we could do it without it, but it's
Let me suggest something here. I'm trying to work, I'm hearing two kind of different themes here. One is that what do we need to do a reality check is where do we bust the $6 million? What's the base assumption of that? Now you can, if Chris's way is sort of getting back to what Mayor Clark was asking us was, what are the assumptions about future growth, citing back to the McLaren study, which said over 20 years we would do this and this and this. Another way to go about it is to say, whether it's 96 officers or this is what we have today, and this is the space we need. With 96 officers, whatever number of lockers it needs to be, this is the base assumption. Please, but we need to have all of the stuff that goes into making the crime lab function. You got to have the vent hoods, and you got to have all that stuff. Go and for a certain amount of money and a certain amount of time, let's say a schematic design, what I'll call first cut, they come back and say, it cost you X. Now, I don't know if X is going to be $3 million, $4 million. I don't know what X is going to be, but that is at least a first kind of reality check. Then if you want to say, well, you know what, now we need to know, are we going to grow, are we going to add officers in the next 10 years? Then you've got X plus. So if you're kind of following me here, Chris and Scott, what I'm trying to do is merge the issue about what is the total scope versus some concerns given the availability of money and what the expectation is what's going to be the total check, whenever it's going to be that we're going to write.
Well, we have what John's got with his little calculator there, and we have what was said at the workshop about how much it would cost. So I hate to ask it, but are we confident now that we would exceed, are we possibly confident now we'd exceed the $6 million by, even if we could get this at 3.2, which we can't?
The number, and I can tell you, I didn't get this until after I gave you that number, so this is very much different than what I had. And the number was very much, kind of gun to my head, give me your best guess. I will tell you that, you look at this building, a 25-year-old building, and there's going to be a lot of things that need to happen with this building, mechanical, electrical, lighting, roofing. I don't know what's going to be needed, but a lot of that's going to come apparent as part of the due diligence that's going to need to be covered before we even get into it. And then, so my gut is telling me that, yeah, you're outside of that 2.5 with this. Not positive, and I think what I'm hearing here is go do this and do it as cost effectively, as inexpensively as possible. Reuse furniture, the other two pieces that I don't know yet are, what do we assume with the spaces that we don't use? Do they just stay? Do they get boarded off and we keep them completely out of the estimate? Or do we need to make sure that the lights and the mechanical systems and that those things are all covered in those spaces? The other piece is okay, what happens when you move out of this space? Do you need to do something here? Do I need to have some money in the budget to cover, what's going to happen to these spaces when they get vacated? So I start taking all those things into account, and I start going, yeah, the price is going up.
So you're thinking you do need to take time and sort of work it out rather than to ballpark it?
Well, yeah, work it out more than I worked it out so far, which is basically not at all.
It's 10 till 11, and I don't know how long in the night you want to go. But, to make a decision, let's move what's here over there, figure of a space for them, and let's price it out. It's the only way we're going to at least get a starting.
That's what I was, if you're comfortable with that, at least
my
give
motion.
me.
Repeat it for Wendy, please.
Well, you already have that motion on the floor. and Peggy made it and Deb seconded it, and that was that the move cost be based on the current staffing levels of 96 people. So you're basically costing out what it would take to replicate everything that we have right now over in a new building on Mineral.
Plus the dispatch center,
Well,
or not?
we haven't, that
Okay.
probably needs to be a second.
You want to do that as a separate
Let's do that as
motion?
a separate
Okay.
motion.
All right, sir.
All right, discussion on the motion? Council ready to vote?
I'm sorry, can you put it back up, Mayor? The vote is 6 in favor with Councilman Clark voting no. The motion's approved.
Okay, now, dispatch center.
Make a motion to price out moving police and fire dispatch Mineral.
Price moving all dispatch.
Second.
And seconded by Jose. Discussion?
The vote is 7 in favor. The motion's approved.
Okay. Now, what are we going to do with the empty space? Are we going to leave it there? Are we going to get it to the point where it can be leased out? Are we just going to have 17,000 square feet of empty building sitting there?
Let's just get a price now. That's what we voted on.
Well, but do we want to price it at doing anything with the empty portion, or are we pricing it as in the police are going to be the only entities in the building?
Well, I have a question. Since we're not sure what it would get used for, and then some changes might have to be made later, would you wait and upgrade any systems at that time?
Well, if you have a light switch that has lights that take on 2 or 3 acres of the building, and you're only going to use 1 acre of the building for the police, then you have to separate those lights off to a separate switch, or you're going to run them every time you're running them for the police side. So part of the decision has to be, what are you going to do? If you're going to lease out a portion of the unused space, then I would think that the police would have security issues of how you get into the police side versus how you get into the other side. If you're going to have people other than the police using the parking lot, I don't know, maybe the police don't care if their cars are sitting, the patrol cars are sitting intermixed with civilian cars from people that you're leasing the building to. So if you're going to cost it out on what you're actually going to do with the building, you have to know what you're going to do with the unused portion of the building, unless council doesn't care.
Well, I think you want to price it out to some point. I'd like to see it kept separate, because by leasing it out, it's actually a revenue producer. And so it could actually more than pay for itself once it got going. So I'd like to see it priced out separately. And I think, we don't know the specs of that. I think,
And maybe just to jump in here, maybe what you want to do is, I think you're going to have to size, if you have to do something with the mechanical equipment, you size it to cover the whole building. You're obviously going to do the roof to cover the whole building. For that space, what you can assume is, if you lease it out, the tenant's going to finish it, you're going to work it into lease cost, and maybe you just keep that outside of the whole number, the whole equation for right now.
that makes sense. Okay, do we have to vote on that?
No, because it hasn't been made as a motion.
Okay.
And how long do we think this is going to take to get this information?
We're guessing, this is just an educated guess, 90 to 120 days. And what I'll do is sit down with these gentlemen in the morning, or sometime the next day or two with the chief. We'll scope out first the due diligence, which council asked us to do, which is that baseline evaluation of the roof and the mechanical systems, and then we'll do what we call a schematic, which is a basic layout and cost estimate of just what you voted on, moving the department down there with the 96 officers, and we'll come back and that'll give you a kind of at least a first reality check.
Can we do those simultaneously?
Yeah, we can. One of the things that you can do is if you go out there and do the due diligence, which you heard is 15 to 20,000. If that comes back and it says, gee, this building's got major problems and it could kill the deal immediately, then you would, if you had done it concurrently, you're going to spend money on that design, whatever design you've done to that point while they're doing the due diligence. It's a little bit of a risk.
Well, one of the things, if you're buying this from someone and you're doing due diligence and you find out that there's then all of these problems, is there not an opportunity to get the price of the building lower down or get the seller to do some of the improvements? So
I
could
think,
it mitigate?
This council, all Scott's saying is there's a little bit of a risk that you could spend some design money if you want to go simultaneously, but I'm reading council as saying you want to get this thing going. Is that?
I'd like to
okay, I'm sorry, then maybe we better back up.
Let's
okay.
make that as a motion so we figure it out.
That's a good question to ask, is if you want to do due diligence, do it sequentially, and then come back and do the schematic design.
Can I make a motion?
Yes.
Make
please.
a motion to conduct due diligence and the schematic design, and to have a appraisal of the building and the property running simultaneously, not to exceed 100 days.
That's it. Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to conduct due diligence, a schematic design, and an appraisal simultaneously with those tasks not to exceed 100 days. Discussion? Jim?
Debbie, I'm going to vote against your motion. I think that if we do the cost estimate and it comes back way above our budget, I don't want us to have been spending money to get the other things done. I think it could be a waste of money, and I just think that's not wise to do.
Tom?
I have to go along with Jim on that, because if we find out the cost is real high, let's forget it right away. And the police department needs something now, and we're talking another 3.5 months of waiting. I don't want to wait that long to say what we're going to do for the police department.
Further discussion? Okay, the motion is to conduct due diligence, schematic design, and appraisal simultaneously with those tasks not to exceed 100 days. Council ready to vote?
The vote is 1 in favor with 6 voting no. The motion fails.
I would assume that since the simultaneous failed, that we were back to the sequential. Because that's the only other alternative.
If that's the consensus and that's our direction, then we'll.
I'll make a motion that we conduct due diligence and an appraisal of the property simultaneously, not to exceed 45 days.
For what? For both?
Hang on.
For a motion for the due diligence and an appraisal to happen simultaneously and not to exceed 45 days.
I think they already told us they couldn't do it in 45 days.
No, the due diligence,
But hang
not
on.
the schematic.
Hang on. We have to get a second first. Okay, the motion is to do due diligence and an appraisal simultaneously with those tasks not to exceed 45 days. Is there a second for that? Okay, it dies for lack of a second. So, we're not doing the due diligence, the schematic, and the appraisal simultaneously, and we are not doing the due diligence and the appraisal simultaneously. So we're basically at sequential, unless there's another variation.
I think unless there's another variation, our team would move ahead.
So which are we starting with?
Due diligence.
Okay. And we don't need a motion on that? Okay.
I think we passed that already.
Then,
Well,
And we-
haven't
Unless you
given
want
specific
to be real
instruction.
clear about it.
and we expect that the due diligence take about 45 days, I think is what you
I
said.
think that was an estimate that, and
About,
again,
yeah.
yeah, and again, that's, can we, as Chris said, are the records available? So far, we've not been able to get as-built, which are the actual construction drawings.
Okay, so
But it's sort of, it is approximately
it's okay.
45, okay.
So we have on the table then, this, which we're doing due diligence on.
Hang on, we're
We
not
have-
necessarily doing due diligence. We have motions that the cost is to be based on various aspects. I'm assuming that that cost is on schematics. So let's just get a motion to get the due diligence out of the way. Do you want to do due diligence?
To start with due diligence?
No, do you want to do due diligence?
To actually do due diligence?
Yes.
So moved.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to do due diligence. Discussion?
I guess I want to know what the alternative is.
To not do it, to just go directly to the schematics and cost it out that way.
I'm with Tom. I want to know what the bottom line is going to cost us to do this, and whatever you got to do to get there, that's all I want.
Then you
Whatever
probably want to
call
vote
it.
yes.
What do you want to call it? I don't care.
Okay.
The vote is 6 in favor, with Councilman Mulvey voting no. The motion's approved.
Okay.
Now,
Debbie?
so now I'm going to clarify where we are. We're doing due diligence on this building.
Yes, ma'am.
We still have, as a contingency, a plan for building, adding on to this site, our current site. Is that right?
If your motion from your workshop is still
Right,
valid,
right.
yes, ma'am.
I'm probably going to be forced to put this in a motion, but I alluded, I said during regular council meeting that I had heard a property is available that's fairly close to this campus, and what I've heard is it's been appraised at a very affordable rate, and I'd really like to see if that's true and if there's any possibility it might do. That can occur without obligating us to anything except investigation while this other process is occurring. So is anybody interested in this unnamed location?
Me to name it for you?
You want me, okay, go ahead. Anyway, so I'm talking about the sheriff IREA building. So it seems to me that it doesn't hurt us to find out some information about that.
So what's the motion?
So I would move that we find out, is it available? What kind of price is somebody asking for it, and so forth?
The so forth is a pretty big part.
Is it suitable?
Well, I'm sort of just scouting it out or whatever, bring us back some information on it. I don't know, I mean, who should go look at it to say, oh yeah, this is usable, or no, this is not usable, or, who would be doing that? I mean, I'm not capable of doing that because I don't know the things to be looking at.
I'll second that.
I'm not sure what it is yet.
We've got marching orders on mineral. We're not pursuing the addition. So now to have a third component in here when,
We're looking at 45 days on due diligence. It's a month and a half.
Hang on, we're trying to get the motion figured out first, and then we can have discussion on the motion. So you're trying to find out if the sheriff's building is available.
Is available and at some kind of ballpark price, and if
Okay.
it, and does it meet our, at all meet our needs to have it kind of on the back burner?
Well,
And we owned all the land behind it.
finding out whether it's available, let's do this in parts. Is your motion to find out if the building is available and what the price is?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we have a motion to find out if the old sheriff's office is available and what the price is.
Second.
Okay. Find out if sheriff's building available and price. Now, discussion. Deb?
Well, I'll repeat. We made a decision to vet this issue out and to throw another building into it. At this point, I think it's not what the charge that we put forth. The staff time it's going to take to work on this, to get us what we need, the information that we need to have, you know, I don't think it's necessary to start dividing that up right now. I think we've got marching orders here, and we'll vet this out, and I'm not going to support the motion.
I would guess that very quickly staff could find the answers to the motion, and if it's something that may work, it's another option. I don't think when we said pursue mineral, we said and eliminate all other options that may come up. We eliminated the options that we were presented with, except for option one of building here. So this is something new that's come up. I think at least get an answer for us.
Yeah, I don't think it's asking staff to go a lot of work. We just want to find out what it costs.
Well, further discussion? We're already in the frontier. We're already beyond what the motion was that was made at the workshop, because that was to make an offer at 3-2. So we're basically beyond whatever direction we thought we were giving at the workshop. My concern is unless you're comparing the cost of the Mineral Avenue building to another alternative that's equivalent to that you have no idea whether the Mineral Avenue building is a reasonable expenditure of taxpayer dollars. I have no idea what the size of the sheriff's office building is, or what the cost is, or anything else like that. But frankly, I don't even know how much space we're going to use on this building. So at this point in time, I guess I'll support it, which actually surprises me. Council, ready to vote?
The vote is 4 in favor, with Councilman Taylor, Councilwoman Brinkman, and Councilman Trujillo voting no. The motion's approved.
Okay. Now, is there anything else that we want to do at 11:07?
Go to bed. Go home.
Is there any other? Do you have enough direction?
Yes, sir.
To go back and provide us what we think we're asking for?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you very much for your time. We're adjourned.